The time is now 5:30 p.m. It's July 17, 2019, and this public meeting of the State Board of Education will come to order. The roll will now be called to determine the presence of a quorum. Mr. Hayworth?
Dr. Gasoi.
Present.
Mr. Jacobson.
Present.
Ms. Wattenberg.
Present.
Dr. O'Leary.
Present.
Mr. Parker.
Present.
Dr. Sutter.
Present.
Ms. Williams.
Present.
Mr. Batchelor. Mr. Batchelor. Ms. MacLeay. Ms. MacLeay. Madam President, you have...
A quorum has been determined, and before the State Board proceeds with its agenda, I would ask unanimous consent for our at-large representative, Ashley MacLeay, to participate in our votes tonight via phone. Is there any objection? Seeing none, we will continue with our agenda. Members, we have a draft agenda before us. Are there any corrections or additions?
Madam President?
Yes.
Regarding the resolution on high school growth, I made significant modifications following a working session incorporating 95% of the edits suggested by my colleagues. Unfortunately, yesterday a major rewrite was proposed and insisted upon that does not reflect the discussion at our working session, and a compromise was elusive. Until the full board has an opportunity to review and consider these amendments, I don't believe this resolution should come to a vote. I move the agenda be amended to remove item 8.3 SR 19-8 high school growth.
There's a motion to amend the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? I'll say something. I think it's a great idea because it's the middle of the summer, and I think it would be useful to have an important discussion when families are here anyway, so I think it's a terrific idea.
Madam President, I would add, the board received an email today with some additional information about concerns from members of the public about this resolution, so I think additional time to discuss it would be helpful.
Agreed. Okay. Seeing no further discussion.
Additional discussion? Is discussion still open?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, if other people have things...
I mean, it's open if you
Yeah,
want.
great.
Okay.
I just want to say that this is disappointing to me that a new round of testing will be imposed on all of our students without this oversight body weighing in. Thank you.
Just to be clear, the new round of testing is not imminent. Am I wrong on that? So you think the difference between voting on this today and September is going to make a difference in that?
Yes, that would mean that the school year would start without us discussing the issue.
Okay. Additional discussion? Okay, seeing no further discussion, the vote is on the motion to amend the agenda. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion to amend is approved. Is there further discussion on the agenda as amended? Okay. Seeing no changes, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Second? Second. Motion being properly moved and seconded, I will ask for the yeas and nays. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion is approved. We have minutes from our July 2nd working session before us. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Seeing no changes, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I don't have the minutes.
Dr. O'Leary, the minutes are sent in the email prior to the meeting, and they're online. We don't print them usually.
Okay.
Is there a second? Did we get a second?
Second.
The motion being properly moved and seconded, I will ask for the yeas and nays. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. Motion is approved. Good evening. My name is Ruth Wattenberg, Ward 3 representative and president of the State Board of Education. On behalf of the members of the DC State Board of Ed, I want to welcome our guests and our viewing public to our Wednesday, July 17th public meeting. The State Board holds its regularly scheduled meetings on the third Wednesday of every month at the Old Council Chambers at 441 4th Street Northwest. In addition to broadcasting this meeting live via the District Knowledge Network, we are also live streaming via Periscope on Twitter, and the video for the meeting will be posted on our YouTube page, SBOE. Our next official meeting of the State Board is our working session on August 7th. The State Board will not hold a public meeting in August. Tonight, the State Board will be considering some administrative resolutions, including setting a need for appropriations, and we will also consider a resolution that sets out the work of the State Board based on the priorities we set in March 2019. We are also honored to have 3 district teachers, or 2 I think, who have been awarded prestigious teaching awards for their work joining us tonight. These teachers will speak to us about their perspectives from the classroom. We look forward to their testimony, thank them for being here, and congratulate them for their awards. At this time, I would like to turn to our State Superintendent, Hansel Kang, for any comments she might have.
Thank you, President Wattenberg and members of the State Board of Education. It's good to be with all of you. I wanted to speak about 2 items this evening. First, I'm also pleased to see that the board is taking the opportunity to engage with some of our city's most outstanding teachers this evening. The teachers on this panel and others like them around our city are engaging in the tough yet gratifying work of educating our students. They're making exemplary strides with their students, and they deserve our gratitude and respect. In May, I shared with you that our finalists for the 2020 DC Teacher of the Year include experts in their subjects and who have demonstrated mastery in the classroom and leadership in their communities. It is vitally important that all of us obtain teacher perspective on important policy issues, and I'm eager to hear tonight from 2 of our 3 finalists, Daniel Spruill and Justin Lopez-Cardoze, as well as from Gary Hamilton, who won the Rubenstein Award for Highly Effective Teaching in DC Public Schools. Secondly, while I appreciate that the board has amended their agenda, the agenda this evening, I wanted to recap some information presented by OSSE at the recent working session regarding our proposal around high school growth. During public engagement on our SS State Plan in 2017, both the State Board of Education and OSSE heard significant public interest in incorporating measures of high school growth in the STAR framework. Understanding that high school growth measures were unavailable at that time, the State Board and OSSE expressed an ongoing commitment to develop and include these measures. In fact, in the approved SS State Plan, OSSE committed to bringing a proposal on high school growth to the board at the end of the 2018-19 school year. The desire for a high school growth measure has continued to be a primary theme of feedback from parents, families, educators, and community members throughout the DC school report card engagement and conversation since the release of the report card and STAR framework in December. At the June working session, I followed through on the commitment we made in the approved ESSA plan to bring forward a proposal on high school growth, and I took questions from the board at the time. As I shared, OSSE will work toward including normative and/or criterion referenced growth metrics in the calculation of the STAR framework for high schools in fall 2021. In school year 1920 and 2021, OSSE will develop and model normative and/or criterion reference growth metrics for the STAR framework for high school. And beginning in 1920 school year, the district will require statewide assessments in high school for Algebra 1 and English 1, as well as Geometry and English 2. At this time, we are not making decisions about how growth measures will be weighted in the STAR framework. Those decisions will require significant public engagement and approval by this board. Our proposal around how to get to a high school growth framework is responsive to the feedback solicited by the State Board and OSSE from many sources and the feedback heard from school leaders in many ways. The proposal is, as I noted, rooted in the community desire we have heard for a high school growth measure, but it also has instructional value for students and educators. Algebra 1 and English 1 are foundational content areas critical for success in college and career. This proposal gives us an opportunity to report school, LEA, and state-level performance on these subjects for the first time, to provide additional opportunities to see progress, and to support schools in providing early interventions and supports for students, while also maintaining our investment and commitment over the last 5 years to longitudinal information in Geometry and English 2. The proposal is also technically sound. It provides 2 opportunities for schools to demonstrate growth, from 8th grade ELA and Math to English 1 Algebra 1, and from English 1 Algebra 1 to English 2 and Geometry. Adding these additional assessments ensures that more students are included in growth calculations and also accounts for the significant student mobility we see among our schools. The proposal also reflects best practice by allowing time to model the metric to address technical complexities. As the Center for Assessment advised in their memorandum submitted to the board in May, we suggest a prudent path forward that involves a period of careful planning and investigation into the design and implementation issues. The Center recommended a pilot phase to empirically evaluate the model, which is what we are doing in our proposal. I know that the inclusion of high school growth measures in the STAR framework remains an important priority for all of us, and we look forward to continuing to move forward in the most responsible manner possible. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight.
Thank you very much. Now we're up to public comment. The State Board welcomes public participation in activities under our authority. At every public meeting, we begin with testimony from public witnesses on education-related matters. Your comments will become part of our official record. If you're a member of the public and would like to speak at a future public meeting, please contact our staff by email at sboe@dc.gov or by calling 202-741-0888. Tonight we have one public witness. If the witness has provided written comments, they are available on our website. And I will now call our witness, Joel Spangenberg from Ward 6, to come down to the table. Mr. Spangenberg, you have 3 minutes to speak this evening. Note that you must use your mic. Your mic is already on. The light on the table will be green for the first 2.5 minutes. It will turn yellow for the last 30 seconds and will turn red after 3 minutes have elapsed. Please begin when you're ready, and then we'll take a round of questions from the board.
Okay, thank you. Members of the board, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to testify. My name is Joel Spangenberg, and I'm here to discuss selective service system registration in my personal capacity. My views are informed by my experience with that federal agency. I believe that DC schools should help prevent our young men from falling behind by reminding them to register with selective service. This is a career and life readiness issue. Moreover, the school systems are important to focus upon due to their interaction with men as they prepare to enter the registration window at 18 years old. I'd like your support for increasing selective service system registration awareness and registration opportunities in DC schools. Here is some background. As of 2017, only 51% of DC's young men, 18 through 25 years of age, have registered with selective service. This is far below the 92% national average. DC has also a 37% registration rate for 18-year-olds. Overall, DC ranks last in the United States in its registration rate. If men do not register by the time they turn 26, they risk permanently losing valuable federal benefits and opportunities that they may need in life. Specifically, registration is an eligibility requirement for men to receive federal student aid, participate in federal job training programs, work for the federal government, the area's biggest employer, I might add, and become naturalized as U.S. citizens. I wrote to the D.C. State Board of Education earlier this year about the consequences of low selective service registration and what D.C. schools can do to help. I have received some board feedback, which could be the starting point for more engagement on this issue. Overall, this may be in alignment with your current vision. The board's equity statement says, the desired outcome will be that all DC students will graduate from high school fully prepared for college and career opportunities as engaged and active residents who are prepared to thoughtfully participate in society. Here are some ideas to consider. Find a way to include selective service registration awareness in the STAR or other relevant framework as an indicator of career readiness. For example, high schools can be evaluated on their participation in the Selective Service High School Registrar Program. The board could include selective service registration awareness as a graduation requirement. Perhaps an approach mirroring the one used by the Department of Motor Vehicles could be established. And number 3, since the board advises the state superintendent of education, it could advise her on ways to increase registration awareness, providing extra materials to young people who complete the FAFSA and taking steps to embed registration awareness into programs for men who are re-engaging with their education after dropping out would help. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you very much. Questions from board members?
Yes. I'm a former teacher and a veteran, and I know how important registering for the selective service is, but I also know that the information that's given to our students is haphazard at best, and there must be more movement through selective service to come into the schools, especially for the young men, because you were just talking about young men who are going to be 18 years of age when they graduate. So if the senior classes in all the high schools in the city are made aware of this very early, and I think that it should be a graduation requirement, but I don't know how legal that is, to be a graduation requirement for 18-year-old young men as a graduation requirement. But I know how important it is, and this middle paragraph in your testimony is a lot of students don't know about that. They don't understand that they can't get a federal job, they can't work for the government, they can't get financial aid from the federal government if they don't register between 18 and 26. So how can you do that?
To address your first question, how can they register? Is that?
No, I know how to register, but it seems to me that it ought to be user-friendly for the young men, and there's got to be more information out so that it's user-friendly.
Okay, I would like to point out the Selective Service System does have that high school registrar program. Just anecdotally, what I can say is I have personally tried to reach out earlier, actually it was last year, to try to find out which schools are participating, and there was a lot of confusion. And I know Selective Service System itself has reached out to a number of high schools in DC, the broadcast, to just inform them about selective service and participating in that program. So that's one step I think that would be very helpful. And what that looks like is having a volunteer in a school. It doesn't have to be a guidance counselor, it could be a civics teacher, it could be a math teacher, coach, whatever, who can help put up information that Selective Service System will provide free of charge around that school to help raise awareness for young men. And they could do announcements at the school, they can do a whole host of things to get the word out. And I can't speak for the federal agency, but I would definitely love to take any of your thoughts about how they could make things more user-friendly and help improve awareness for the young men, because we certainly want to make it as seamless as possible in their lives. And I'll give you an example. With the FAFSA form, which apparently 63% of DC high school students fill out and complete, they have the option to actually register in there. If a young man goes down to the DC DMV, when they get their license or identification card, they can actually register there that way. I would love to find other ways to make it seamless while also respecting each individual man's choice about registering or not. And I think there are ways forward, and I would love to look for ways, and I think DC is a great place to work with on this.
Thank you.
Mr. Batchelor?
Thank you for joining us, and thank you for talking about this very important issue. And I think to Dr. O'Leary's point, right, access to this information, but also easy ways to do it is something that we've got to for sure be more creative about. But I think, you know, the ways in which you register, like you talked about, I think also those opportunities are disproportionate, which is also something we have to address as well, right? There are a disproportionate amount of folks in communities like, or a lower percentage of folks in communities like mine that are registering to vote that can afford to go down to the DMV and purchase an ID or a driver's license, right? And so making those things easier, right? I checked the box when I went down at 18 and got my ID. But if a student, you know, doesn't find the need for an ID, isn't for some reason filling out the FAFSA form, doesn't want to register to vote, figuring out creative ways for them to fulfill that obligation and be able to take advantage of those benefits is something that we've got to think about for sure. But I appreciate you bringing attention to this. Obviously, it's something that sometimes we don't focus on just because it kind of gets lost in the conversation around preparing students for adulthood, right, around the ID and the voter registration, but a very necessary part. So I didn't have a question, but I did want to thank you for that, and then also urge, you know, my colleagues and you know, and folks in government to figure out more creative ways to ensure that our young people have access to that information, and that, you know, where there's already opportunities, that we're making sure that young people are participating in those opportunities as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for your testimony. I guess I was wondering if you know if there are districts that do this better than we do that we could look to. And my second thought is that, you know, in DC we're scaling up and trying to improve the community schools model. And I'm wondering if the community, like every school will have a community schools coordinator, if that is somebody who might be able to sort of make this connection, if that makes sense.
Thank you for those questions. To the latter question, I'm not aware of that, and that would actually be something I would really like to learn more about. So if there's anything we can do or I can do to work on that, I'd be eager to learn more. And places that do it better, I can tell you, DC is a little bit unique. You know, it has features of a city, and you know, some people want it to be a state as well. But when we look at selective service system, let's say statistics nationally, we are compared to states here. We are compared to territories like, you know, Northern Marianas Islands and Guam, Puerto Rico. Some of them have also struggled with registration rates as well. But if you're talking about this region, Maryland is in the, I believe, the mid 80% rate. Virginia's in the mid to high 90s. One differentiation is a lot of people do get driver's licenses when they live in some of these places because they don't have the public transportation opportunities. And they have what's called automatic driver's license legislation. It's just, you know, it's like motor voter. You go down there and you get your license. You're also registering for selective service in this instance. That's what Virginia has, and I know Maryland's been looking at that from time to time. So that's something to think about. But there isn't a perfect one-to-one that I've been able to find yet that's really kind of indicative of DC's situation. But I'm continuing to look to see if there are those city-state combos out there that might shed some light on some other relevant areas in the country.
Ms. Sutter?
Thank you very much, Mr. Spangenberg, for coming to testify. You and I have chatted about this issue over email and in person before, and I appreciate you coming to share your testimony with the board tonight. I was going to ask the question about FAFSA, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because I do think that as we work to expand the number of students who apply for federal financial aid, because whether or not you attend college, the act of applying for federal financial aid is a process that I know OSSI has undertaken and working hard with high schools to improve the rates of students who apply. It sounds like maybe some of the communication opportunities you highlighted would also be part of that, would be making sure that school counselors who are assisting with that process are knowledgeable about the ability to check the box on the FAFSA to complete that process. I wonder if there are other ways you think the board could help with improving some of these communication opportunities to young men, especially about the things that they may lose access to for failing to sign up. Because I was not aware about all of the kinds of things that became restricted to you if you failed to do this, and I would imagine that that is going to be true for some of the young men who have not registered as well.
First off, I do want to give a lot of credit to the Office of the State Superintendent of Education. Members of their team have been helpful and actually creative in working with me. For instance, they have a FAFSA toolkit, and they have offered to include selective service registration information materials in it for the first time. So I think that's a positive step. I will also say DCPS, the chancellor there and members of his team have actually agreed to start including registration awareness, and they have a new program going forward starting next school year where they're going to help focus on career readiness as well. I believe that's going to be tailored for each student, but they want to find a way to help let those, especially seniors, know about it. I am not yet sure the best way to communicate, and I will tell you it's sometimes hard to reach to a school and try to find out the right person to talk to. So any sort of network that we can plug into, I think, would be very helpful. And I think one of the biggest challenges is what the Vice President had picked up on before. And I don't know the exact stat, but I do believe DC has a high school dropout rate. I think we talk about seniors when they hit 18 and helping them register. Before they even get there, I think a number of them are just kind of falling out of the system. Some may actually want to come back in. They may have they may want to come back and get their degree later, and we want to help protect their benefits so they can do it. So part of it is helping to let people know even before they're 18 so they don't miss out on it, and then plugging in with different organizations in DC government like OSSI to help with young men who want to start re-engaging on their education and career readiness. So any program that we can plug into to help with registration awareness, to help that young man who may not have the same opportunities as somebody who is college bound, we want to help make sure that they know too, so they can have a better life and better, they can actually live their dreams as well. So I can say I don't know all the networks, but I would love to plug into more to help out.
Thank you.
I'll come back to you, but let me So first of all, thank you very much. I actually had no idea that people could lose their benefits for their entire life if they failed to sign up by the age of 25. And I say that so that anybody listening to this will now know that is the case, and young men should sign up for selective service unless they have a particular reason not to. I have one just curious question, and then I have some others. So women don't have to?
So this comes under the federal law, the Military Selective Service Act. So the women were not included in that legislation. There have been overtures to include women in selective service system registration. This is, Congress has been grappling with this, and that's a reflection of more combat and other roles being now open to women in the military than there were before. So I know that that's an active question, but as it stands now, it's only limited to men.
And one other just curious question. So women who don't sign up, I guess they can't sign up.
They cannot sign up.
They cannot sign up. So they don't lose benefits at age 25. But do they lose anything else because they're not signed up? Or the only thing that's gained or lost is, okay.
They do not have that same requirement to
All
sign.
right. So I'm just trying to think of, I mean, it seems like part of the idea is to figure out additional automatic routine ways to catch kids. So one question is our very low rate in DC, how much of it is because the schools themselves don't do as well signing kids up as in, say, Virginia or DC, Virginia or Maryland? And how much is the other point, which is there's a lot of students who aren't making it through that pipeline and they're being missed altogether? Do you have a sense?
I actually don't have a good sense. I'm not aware of the actual participation rate, for instance, in the high school registrar program, that voluntary program I told you about. So it's really hard to kind of unpack that, so I wouldn't be able to give you that insight.
And it sounds like in the places that do a good job, the main reason they do a good job is because it's part of these automatic sign-up systems. I mean, part of it is the PR, the awareness, but most of it is really the automatic sign-up.
Yes, and I think there is a lot to be said about automatic sign-up, and I do know that DC Council has grappled with that before. In fact, they did pass legislation to allow opt-out for driver's licenses and identification cards back around 2011. So that when something's opt-out, it makes the default choice is you're in unless you take an action to pull away. And that's why I think the DMV model might be good, because if we present students that option, but also let them know the consequences, they can make an informed choice. So I think, I was one who did register with selective service at 18, and automatic would have worked for me, but I can understand that some people have different views on military service, et cetera, but that would be a way to possibly respect it. And I think you make another point that's very important. The more you can build this into an existing process, for awareness, the more seamless you make it to people. When you create other programs and systems, that gets more complicated, but if you bake it into an existing like checklist, for instance, and
right.
There is that notification and awareness and that opportunity to help somebody do that, make that choice to register, or at least make them aware, I think that's a way to help. So like if we know that there are young men if a young man may have a high risk of dropping out of high school, maybe there's a way that he can be engaged to be reminded of some of these items that he should consider before some of these choices happen, and he can't maybe he can't make adjustments later.
All right. Did you want a second?
I've got just a couple of questions too. Do you have to be 18 to register?
So that's when the registration window opens. So it's, I believe it's 30 days before the 18th birthday. Now with the caveat, I know in some states and locations, when you go get your driver's license before 18, that information will be held for the appropriate time to be submitted and shared with selective service for registration reasons. So let's say you're 16 or 17, that wouldn't be sent and processed, that would be held for the right time to then be applied to those statistics.
Two other things, because we're talking about the draft. For those of you that didn't know, all right, I mean that would hold people still thinking that there's a draft, all right, and it hasn't been a draft for a long time. So that's one thing that might keep people from registering for it. The other thing is that there need to be posters right outside of the counselor's office in the high schools in the city. selective service, so the kids would know. That was it.
That's a great point. If I could just mention the draft, there has not been a draft since 1973. So it's been a long time. But, you know, Congress, and actually it was President Jimmy Carter, in reaction to the invasion of Afghanistan by the Soviets, actually reinstated the selective service registration requirement. It's been supported registration in a bipartisan way ever since. So really what it does amount to, if you're looking at it from that side, it is kind of a guarantee of national resolve that we will rise to the occasion to come together to protect the country in a national emergency. But the other point here is that there are these day-to-day matters which really do affect men if they don't know about it as well.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing, is that the students need to know that their lives will be different if they don't register for it. It's not going to put them in harm's way. It's that their professional lives. They can't get financial aid. They can't get a federal job. That's simple to understand.
Actually, one quick question. So, though it's a federal program, it seems like states dictate the method by which their residents enroll in the program, it seems. Has there ever been conversation about, and I know we've talked about this in relation to voter registration, has there ever been conversation in any state, to your knowledge, around an opt-out system instead of an opt-in system?
For selective service?
For selective service, yes.
When they go to the DMV, am I getting that correct?
Or for instance, has there ever been a process where everybody in a certain state, 18 years or older, is automatically enrolled in selective service and there's an option to opt out for some reason instead of the opposite?
I'm not aware of that beyond the driver's license legislation. That's the closest thing, but then they don't have, in order to get the license, they have to, I mean, registration is baked into that process. That has been very successful, but I know in DC they've had some concerns. But aside from that program, I'm not aware of anything else that kind of gets close to that. But I think that would be something that each state would decide on what their comfort level is with their constituents and applying selective service. But it's not, there could be a way to create that. I actually think the DMV model could be applied to other programs as a successful model where that balances the civic duty to do this and also to protect your benefits, but also to protect individuals' perspectives, perhaps. And that's my personal view, but you could have different views in different states on that.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Hi. Just a quick clarification. Is there no recourse if somebody, it doesn't sign up for this and then they, want to apply for a government job or whatever, and they realize they are shut out? Is there any recourse in any states? Or, I guess it wouldn't be a state thing. Yeah.
Actually, that's a great question, and there is recourse. So what can happen is if somebody's applying for federal student aid and they hear from the benefits determining organization that, oops, you haven't registered with selective service, we need more information. This is a process the man would then need to go through. They would need to contact the selective service. They have a data management center, and they would request a status information letter. It's called a SIL. And that actually is something that the selective service can provide to kind of give an indication of whether or not that young man's failure to register was knowing and willful. Now, I'm not sure what that bar is to clear, but I believe it would be pretty unusual for something to be shown as, I'd say, not knowing and willful, because it is a national program and there's a lot of awareness out there about it. Unfortunately, I'm getting the sense in DC it's not as much as it can be yet. But but there is a process. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the benefits determining organization can have a voice in evaluating that as well. And I want to put an economic impact on this as well. From 2007 to 2016, based on a sampling of the calls that the Data Management Center and Selective Service System had, they were able to determine that over a 10-year period, DC's young men lost about $4.6 million in benefits, and that's just on student aid and federal worker programs. That doesn't take into account lost federal job opportunities, because if you don't register, you're not going to go anywhere on a cert or anything with the federal government. And has nothing to say about the citizenship implications and delaying people's citizenship because they haven't registered, because this does apply to immigrants who are here as well, whether they're here legally or not.
Thank you. Yeah, and I echo President Wattenberg's sentiment. I had no idea, so thank you for raising this. My time is up, because I think it didn't restart, actually. Okay.
All right. Anybody else? I'm going to take one last couple of things. I'm going to ask the staff, and we just talked about it, is to pull together some of this information, some of these statistics into a resolution that maybe we'll adopt in September, and then we can send it out to some agencies and try to use that as a way to sort of start some discussion. I assume you're the one to talk to get some additional ideas about what we might do.
Yes, ma'am. I'm actually, and I will tell you this, in my personal capacity, I'm here testifying, but I am a volunteer for Selective Service.
Okay,
I'm the
great.
former Chief of Staff of Selective Service.
Great.
Done that before, and I'm also a local board member, and that helps maintain the readiness of Selective Service if it ever had to, do its full mission. I would be more than happy to work with you and the rest of the board on that.
All right, let me just, a couple of quick things. One, as I understand it, you're saying currently many states using the DMV model have an opt-out. So you go, you get your license, and unless you explicitly choose to not sign up, you are signed up. And you're saying that's not the case in DC, but there was legislation in front of the council some time ago. So that might be something for us to
Yes.
bang the drum on.
Yes, ma'am. They actually have the opt-out here in DC.
They do
So
have the
just to
opt-out.
clarify, they have
Okay,
opt-out.
all right. So-
And I've actually seen the numbers. They've started to look better. There have been fewer
Okay.
opt-outs. I'll tell you, the DC DMV has been very helpful in working and to provide some insights into this. But I still think there's more progress on that. But the most, I think the strongest step would be the automatic driver's license legislation. But that, I think, I'm not sure where the council is on that exactly, but.
So that's the issue, is okay. So that when you get your license, you're automatically signed up?
Yes, and you can imagine if a lot of young
Right.
men in DC don't engage with the DMV, that may still miss a large
Right,
swath.
right.
But
Well, that's my next question is, do you know of, is it possible, and do any other states or cities have a system where it's connected to sign up, say, for different social services or other interactions with the government? Is that?
some states actually do have legislation that mimics what the federal government has. Like, if you were in some states, you would not be able to get a federal job or get, a state job, or you would not be able to get state benefits. So that's one thing. Now, I think there's the other part is how do you actually help people register, which is another way to look at it. I'm not aware of any states or cities that have kind of taken these kind of more innovative steps to try to resolve this. In fact, in some ways, if DC can address this here, there's a potential to help reach a larger population across the country, which may not be getting the engagement they need from Selective Service. So some of these ideas may be helpful in Pittsburgh or Baltimore, for example, and help young people understand and help them register if they may have fallen out of the system for some reason. We can really help them out that way.
Okay, well, terrific. Thank you. This was very, very useful, and I know you worked hard with Jessica to make this get to us, and we appreciate it very much.
Yes, ma'am. It was a pleasure to testify.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are ready for our teachers panel. The District of Columbia has terrific teachers, and our heartfelt thanks goes out to all of them. They provide students not only with their regular lessons, but stability and consistency in difficult circumstances. Tonight, the State Board is honored to have two outstanding teachers who won or were nominated for major teaching awards this year. And they're here to talk to us about their experience and to let us know how the State Board can be more helpful to them and their peers. So I invite you to come up to the table. Which ones do I have? Oh, I have three. Oh, I thought, okay. Sorry, there's three of you, sorry. Okay. So let me just introduce you. There's Justin Lopez-Cardoze, one of 3 2020 DC Teacher of the Year finalists, hello, a life science teacher at Capital City Public Charter, Dr. Daniel Spruill. Another 2020 DC Teacher of the Year finalist is a music educator at Center City Public Charter, Brightwood. And Gary Hamilton, which must be you, a recipient of the Rubenstein Award for Excellence in Teaching, is a 3rd grade teacher at Langley Education Campus. You each have 5 minutes for an opening statement. Why don't we start at this end?
Sure.
And then we will throw some questions at you. Thank you very much for coming. We really appreciate it.
How do you?
Oh, the mic is on. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Never did this
Was
before.
I supposed to read that?
Uh,
Let me just say, the mic should be on. The light will be green until, at a certain point, as a warning, it'll turn yellow, and then it will turn red, and probably our Executive Director, John Paul, will motion you to be end.
Okay. I can start now. My name is Gary Hamilton. I have been a teacher for more than 14 years, and while I have tampered with other fields, education is the only career I've known. I simply can't quit the profession, and I will probably be forced into retirement in the future. I believe that my attraction to teaching is correlated to my love for children. No matter your level in a school system, you simply cannot successfully do the work without loving children. I'm grateful to have experienced teachers who loved and cared about me holistically. I would argue that my accomplishments, roles, and responsibilities as a student and as an educator is contributed to that feeling of knowing I was loved. I do not want to guide a misleading thought that love is singularity in improving the lives of children. In fact, we all know that education reform means addressing the societal norms and issues that impact quality education in the city. We have argued about the pillars of equity and equality for decades in DC schools. Today, I want to focus on the pillar of equity and gain perspective via the lens of 2 points: the influence of gentrification on neighborhood schools and the need to focus on teacher retention. 11 of my 14 years in teaching have been serving DC public schools in Wards 7 and 5. During this time, I have witnessed and observed the displacement of my own students. Despite the adversity, these same students persevered and successfully completed the academic year. However, it often came at the expense of myself or other staff members who provided support for families in need. Parents, guardians, and children frequently view teachers as immediate support, requesting aid ranging from bus fare to faxing copies of bill payments. My colleagues and I have conducted parent workshops on resume building, advocacy, and community empowerment. As the surrounding community began to change in property value, so did the decrease in demand for some of the supports. This means that the need was shuffled to another school and created a disproportionate rate of underserved students. An example of this can be observed between the state line of Lower Prince George's County and Washington, D.C. For example, Alabama Avenue and Wheeler Road. Other schools are slower to gentrify due to long-lasting effects of homelessness and shelters. Our schools should continue to stand as a beacon of hope to the families we serve. Schools that are 7 minutes walking distance apart should not differ the types of degree or resources available. The overrepresentation of PTA members in some schools do not adequately reflect its student body. Such schools can eliminate the space to hold courageous conversations about issues that impact all students. DCPS has made growth with increasing the line of equity by funding initiatives such as one-to-one supports of technology for students in all grades over a short-term span. For example, it's set to begin in the upcoming school year for 3rd grade. We'll have one-to-one technology support. Observing these changes has caused Observing the changes caused by gentrification has reminded me of the need to revitalize and revamp my practice, relevant to the communities I serve. While remaining constant in my beliefs, I believe all schools should have a parent liaison, all schools should have at least one community-based organization, neighborhood schools should provide advocacy for displaced students. For example, students who live within school zones should not be temporarily displaced before the completion of their high school graduation year. In reference to teacher retention, rather than harp on empirical data that supports various reasons for the attrition rate of teachers, I would prefer to discuss the additional opportunities systems like DCPS can create to restore, sustain, and retain educators. Undoubtedly, the district has established a competitive comprehensive plan that attracts teachers across the nation. Teachers can lead beyond the classroom with work such as becoming a district course chair, lend a voice to decision-making processes with the Chancellor's Teacher Cabinet, or participate in fellowships like Empower Ed. They can even help select the best teachers fit for the district by becoming a teacher ambassador. All these opportunities and more can be found through programs like Leadership Initiative for Teachers, also known as LIFT. However, dubbing yourself as an effective teacher in DCPS is no small claim. It is one that has been coupled with an intense measuring tool. We know it as impact. I have been fortunate to elevate over years of practice with impact, establishing myself as a highly effective teacher. I understand that the performance evaluation is simply one way to scale talent acquisition, but it has been noted that many teachers feel that they're only being viewed through this angle. The trending topic for many teachers across the district, new and veteran, is the need to feel valued, supported, and fully equipped inside the classroom. Specifically, teachers that experience second-hand trauma from their schools are sometimes placed in what I call responsive school environments. These schools are often charged with an all-hands-on-deck approach, limiting space for teachers to grow. Everyone in the building is actively responding to a triage of concerns. Still, students have to learn, and teachers have to teach. My career has only included responsive school environments. Should I just stop now? Okay. My career has only included responsive school environments. My colleagues and some of my closest friends have always taught in said schools. I cannot state any specific teacher preparation program that engages student teachers practically with this understanding, but I do know that the most successful teachers are those with mentors. I have used my knowledge and my experience to support teachers in different schools. I currently mentor a small number of teachers across DCPS. Much of the support I provide is with improving performance on impact, classroom management, and sustaining relationships. That's with the administration, families, and students. As a Black male educator, I recognize the value I add to our schools, but it would be for nothing if I can't help with replicating that value. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go to you, and then we'll come back for questions at the end.
Good evening, DC State Board of Education representatives, and thank you for having me. My name is Daniel Spruill, and I'm the music educator at the Center City Public Charter School's Brightwood campus in Northwest DC. We're a Tier 1 school, and we're ranked as one of the top public charter schools in the District of Columbia. I educate students at my campus in pre-K 3 through 8th grade. I've been teaching informal education for 14 years now. It was never my lifelong aspiration to teach because I was fully active in my career as a musician, songwriter, and producer. However, because of an insightful principal, I was asked to teach and subsequently given the opportunity to impact the lives of students and their families. I continue to teach because I am fully cognizant of the impact and stability I create for my students and their families. Most of all, the desire to continue to be a part of the change needed to help at-risk students to be college ready and succeed in the global community. Although I continue to create through my production company and perform, teaching music is an equal part of my passion that I give on a daily basis to my students. My teaching practice has transformed over the course of 14 years. I began with whole group instruction, but as I developed as an instructor and gained access to data concerning the rate of our children who are considered at risk, it was important for me to develop a music program that was balanced and arts integrated, so that through the small groups, these students could succeed academically and be ready for college. A brain and cognition study from Vanderbilt University shows that trained musicians use both parts of the hemisphere of the brain simultaneously, which allows musicians to efficiently access and integrate competing information and increase divergent thinking. I use this and other studies to help me to plan for my lessons so that the students can connect music concepts such as discipline and cooperation, among others, with math and ELA content in these small groups. The most impactful lesson that I've learned in 14 years as being a music educator is teaching content is not enough. As an educator, I have the responsibility to show how my content can be used in everyday life for my students as well as their parents so that they can take ownership of the educational process and the path towards academic success. Parents and students are mentally aware that music strengthens memory skills, improves abstract reasoning, language development, spatial reasoning skills, which are essential to promote innovation, collaboration, critical and analytical skills needed in the 21st century global community. I've been told by artists and former students that music has helped to avert them being incarcerated, committing suicide, and kept them in school when they wanted to drop out because of a dysfunctional home or just simply being homeless. They left incapable of learning because their learning styles were not being met. However, because of music and the arts, they connected the material and successfully graduated high school. Life shares such as these affirm that I am fulfilling my purpose. Haplessly, 1.3 million children in the United States from elementary through high school do not have access to a robust music program, and half of that number for students having music either for a year or less. In the District of Columbia, not all schools offer music or an arts integrated program, which means learning styles of certain students are not being met. However, many have been lost to juvenile detention centers or drugs because their learning needs were not being met in providing music and the arts with their education. In high school, students can hustle on the streets, some of them who drop out. They can track their inventory, have various denominations, and be successful on the street as it relates to math. So if they're not succeeding in math, then we have to change our approach on how we are engaging their learning styles so that they can be successful. I want to quote the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development that says, Shanghai has embraced the notion that immigrant children are our children. And here in DC, I firmly believe that at-risk children are our children, and they need access to resources as well as their learning styles being met. It is unjust and unbalanced when a child's need is not being met. As I continue in education here in the District of Columbia, I'm looking forward to the day when the district sets the standard of educational excellence, not only in the United States, but globally, so that all students, no matter where they may be, will be able to learn because they want to learn and will succeed in this global community when all available resources and options have been given to them, which includes music and the arts. Thank you.
I just want to say one thing, is our executive director leaned over to me and he's going to let everybody go a little bit longer because it's very interesting. That's very rare.
Okay.
Great. To the members of the DC State Board of Education, I stand or sit before everyone here with the utmost gratitude to be both present and speaking on behalf of our educational and greater communities here within the district. With respect, I join my fellow finalists for the 2020 DC Teacher of the Year Award and honor their exceptional contributions towards their students, families, staff, and neighborhoods we serve each and every day. This is quite a rewarding role, but one of the wildest, and we can take that notion in any way we can based on our experiences. I'm very sure of that. But the three of us are truly warriors for what we do, and we love what we do. My name is Justin Lopez-Cardoze. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I teach 7th grade life science at Capital City Public Charter School. I have taken on several instructional and socio-political opportunities heading into my 4th year at Capital City and have learned a great deal in each role. Outside of Capital City, I have worked with urban teachers in collaborations with the Johns Hopkins University School of Education as clinical faculty, educating UT fellows on secondary science pedagogy and curricula. Since 2011, when I first started my career in education, I have worked as a teacher for America's Secondary Science Quorum member in Jacksonville, Florida, Quorum member advisor, teacher education facilitator, and STEM instructional coordinator for the organization. Along the way, I earned my Master of Science degree in biotechnology from the Johns Hopkins University while having taught all grades between 7th through 12th, and now here I am. I love my community, my families, and I have a love for who I work with every day when I enter the building. But this is a different kind of love. With this love comes a relentless obligation and the capacity to embrace this obligation to educate, support, protect, nurture, and to build our youth into the leaders of today. I stick around with the conviction to overcome any preconceived ideologies that we together are solely placed into the world of education, only envisioning systemic change for our youth to foster at a later time. Our households, our neighborhoods, our district, our country, and our world truly need to harness the strengths of our youth here and now more than ever. And as teachers, we owe it to our district to provide power, respect, and love for every student. In October 2018, the board released the SBOE Teacher Turnover Report, which proved to be quite comprehensive and transparent. Upon deep examination of the report, DCPS middle schools lose the highest rate of teachers each year at approximately 32%, in comparison to elementary and high schools, which currently lose teachers at around 25% rates. Nearly 1/3 of our middle school teachers are leaving, while the national average for middle schools are around 16%. According to the American Educational Research Journal, high levels of teacher turnover can reduce student achievement, even among students whose teachers have remained in the school, and especially in schools with higher proportions of low-performing and African American students. Understanding our demographics and my experiences working within the district, I charged the board to hone in on our middle schools, both public and public charter, implementing actions that could determine promising results of student achievement, which could be modeled for elementary and high schools. In conjunction with the recommendations provided by the board in the report, I claim the following actions can support elevating teacher retention in our district, especially in our middle schools, both directly and implicitly raising teacher fulfillment, appreciation, and satisfaction. Develop innovative strategies to raise the successful recruitment of Native, Black, African American, and Latinx district teachers, teacher leaders, and school leaders to serve in our middle schools who are deeply committed to liberatory learning and academic achievement of our students. Professionally develop teachers, teacher leaders, and school leaders on culturally relevant pedagogy, diversity, equity, and inclusiveness through the lens of connecting this dual relationship to student achievement and therefore teacher retention. Establish equity core committees in every middle school in the district in order to either pilot or continuously improve the advocacy of defending and protecting teachers curated to the school's culture and policies. Implement restorative DC in all schools within the district, notably in our middle schools. Create a task force within the board to create initiatives which honor teachers both within specific schools and holistically within our district. Host an annual panel of teachers working in our middle schools to share their perspectives on what's keeping them in our classrooms and how to keep others in them too. And to compile family and community member perspectives on teacher retention within the district. I sincerely appreciate your time this evening, and I look forward to any questions, comments, or feedback from the board. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. We'll now turn to the board for questions. I'll turn that over to our executive director.
Dr. O'Leary. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
I want to emphasize gentlemen. We have 3 male teachers of the year, and that's fabulous, and all of color too, and that's wonderful. I taught for 47 years at Cardozo High School, and I just want to ask all 3 of you a couple of questions, but I want to make sure that Mr. Cardoze, even though I am a Cardozo person, make sure we call you by the right name.
Thank you.
You gave a really good presentation of what we're working on as far as teacher retention, and we'd like help from all the teachers. What causes teachers to leave? And Mr. Hamilton, why don't you begin?
Oh, sure. You mean
You
like
all stayed.
Say it again?
You all stayed.
Yes.
I want to know why teachers leave.
I mean, as I stated, there are a lot of reasons. One of them mainly being that they feel a lack of support. There's in some sense, like a sense of exhaustion, especially amongst male educators of color. They just kind of feel that we have this surrogacy role, and it's sometimes not necessarily acknowledged, and it's exhaustive. For example, I do many things that are not mentioned in the accolades and accomplishments that I received with DCPS, and it's taxing. And some of our schools are frankly quite challenging. And you also have this really daunting measuring tool that kind of comes behind you, and you just kind of feel that there's a lack of support. And so that in itself, coupled with that secondhand trauma that I was speaking to, like sometimes some of the things that my children or my students go through, I internalize. Sometimes I experience some levels of countertransference, but then I have that resilience, as I'm sure these guys do here, and you bounce back and you teach them how to overcome that. But that's not part of any teacher preparation program. As I said, if you work inside a responsive school environment, if you're my principal, you don't have time to support me with that. You know, and neither does my assistant principal. They may be responding to a situation that's up on the second floor. All the teachers and instructional coaches may be responding to a situation in the cafeteria, and then you're there, you're a first year teacher, and you're thinking, how do I deal with this parent, or how do I deal with this situation? And they need a mentor. I need these guys to come and remind me that I am doing a good job. And you know, it's not necessarily the evaluation tool that I need. Sometimes it's that SEL support. So a lot of teachers have mentioned, there's nobody that's telling me that I'm doing a good job. You know, the classroom is a space for error, but teachers can't make mistakes, but that's not true. You can. You just need someone to help you through that process. And so I think a lot of times, feeling that you can't have that, they just tap out.
For me personally, over 14 years, there's been a reoccurrence as it relates to two themes that I've heard from colleagues that I've worked with. The first is that where they work is they're clusters. So you don't really have a community that is built. For example, you might have, let's say the primary team only works with the primary team, or the arts team only works with the art team. And if you're isolated, you feel that, and then you feel the pressures of the job. And then you have personal issues that you're bringing to work, and then having to deal with the isolation being at work for some have been too much. And the other is, and I'm grateful that I've had exquisite leadership, because I've been with my organization since we were parochial, and I came over when we became public charter. So I've had great administrators, but if there isn't strong leadership at a campus that is willing to listen, not only to listen, but to understand. There's still a school that needs to be run, but as my colleague just stated beautifully, if educators don't feel appreciated on a campus level, it doesn't matter what type of relationship that they have with the families. It won't be enough to allow them to stay. I keep coming back, whether I'm sick or well, because not just the relationship that I have with the families that I love. These kids are like my own children. But I have an administrator sometimes who has to tell me, take care of yourself, stop. What's going on with you? Is everything is okay? But she is also firm enough to say, well, you can improve in this area. And when you have that balance as an educator, and that you know that your administrator is out there working hard for you to get resources and to make sure that you're succeeding because you have the best interests of the students at heart and their families, those type of things will allow you to stay. But unfortunately, that's not the case in every school.
I think that this boils down, there are many, many factors, but when, at the end of the day, I think that two of the biggest key players in the reason why teachers are leaving is the interconnectedness between school culture and also instruction. So when I think about culture, I think about, from the teacher perspective, if I feel a sense of belonging, if I feel like I'm working with a purpose, and if I feel like I have the empowerment to operate as an agent, both within the classroom and within the school. And so when one of those three areas are, or more than one of those three areas are kind of, taken, put on the back burner for whatever reason due to a teacher's experience, that can be very traumatic to experience. Going in and you're giving it, all of your heart and your soul, and you're saying, okay, well, do I feel like I truly belong? And I have had the privilege to have an administration, to have a leadership team where I feel completely embraced within my own skin, within my own identity, across all of my identity markers. But that can be a big reason why teachers are leaving, and also their investment in instruction. I think that there is a strong disconnect between the actual curricula that we are provided with and the ways and the strategies that we implement it. And that's why I emphasized culturally relevant pedagogy as being one of the areas that we professionally develop our teachers in, because it is one that can truly invest, most importantly, our students, and meet them where they are, in their background, sociopolitically, to elevate, the cultural competency of, teachers, of students, of everyone. But it's just incredibly investing for a teacher to do this and to learn and to elevate the degree to which they are implementing culturally relevant pedagogy. And so I think at the end of the day, it just boils down to those two factors of how good can you provide the instruction, and how good is your school's culture, and then how can the culture be improved.
Thank you.
Dr. Gasoi.
Hello.
Hello.
So excited to have you here. I was a teacher for 9 years in Boston and worked with teachers here in DC, and I know it's one of, if not the most demanding job there can be. And I was also lucky enough to work in a school where we had a school leader. It was actually a teacher-led school, and we had a leader who kind of was a buffer between us and the system. So, and even then, I know it's like one of the most demanding jobs you can have. So I really appreciate your testimony, all three of you. I guess my big question, so I'm also excited hearing you talk about culturally relevant pedagogy and, how much we need arts in our curriculum and relationship building, because I think there's a lot of acknowledgement around that, and yet we seem to keep doing things the same way. So I would love to hear from each of you what you feel are the main obstacles to be able to do, what you're saying we need to do more fully in our systems, not just in your schools. And then what do you think might be some ways to facilitate, being able to do the things you're talking about? I know you've mentioned some.
I've written a proposal which I've actually presented to our chancellor while I sat on the chancellor's cabinet. I actually presented to former Chancellor Kaya Henderson and Jason Cameras. And it was actually specifically designed for impact. We know that that's like a really heavy conversation, not sure where it's going to go, but while it's here right now, I thought that there are many passionate educators who are sometimes at the edge of being temporarily or being terminated. And I think that the summertime is a great opportunity for them to kind of redeem themselves. So I created this proposal called Teach Plus in Action, where you would actually get to, I'm gonna use myself as an example, this is the best way I can do it. These two guys here are effective and highly effective teachers. I am a minimally effective or a developing teacher, and I'm now in my final round where I'm going to possibly lose my job, but I have the passion and the drive to teach, but there's something missing in my pedagogy. So what would happen is that in the summertime, one of these guys will take me in the summertime, because you have students and I'm a teacher and they're teaching, and I would go and I would work with them, and then they would coach me throughout the 4 or 5 weeks of summer school. Then my principal will come along, give me another observation, kind of give me an opportunity to redeem myself, get a higher score, and then I keep my job. When we come back in the fall, instead of me going to the professional developments around, let's say, Dibbles and TRC, I would go and meet with these guys, and these guys would be my coaches. They would be my mentors. So every time I go to professional development, I would meet with a small cohort that's improving my practice throughout the school year, and I constantly move along that band of impact. And so now you have used teachers who have been highly effective for years. I've been highly effective for quite some time, and I did this on my own, and I've seen it work. I've helped people save their jobs. I've helped people become highly effective. I've helped teachers improve in classroom management, and it literally costs nothing except for an opportunity to allow other great educators to be a coach. Maybe a small stipend or something, I don't know. But I think that it's a great plan. I presented it, and I'm going to keep presenting it until I get some feedback.
No one wants to work anywhere where they are devalued. That's the reality. I could be an excellent educator, but if there is no joy in coming to work or to working with children, and that is a reality that exists, something has to change to where, as my colleague said, the culture that I come into that school building is one that says, even if it's a stressful day, it's going to be a great day. And I've worked at all of our campuses within our district, and not all of them have been the best. However, when I have effective and strong leadership who is also supportive to be able to come into that building, no matter if it is chaotic, we can turn it around. And unfortunately, whether you are a passionate, and I said this one time, and I keep getting in trouble, but it's the truth. I categorize teachers in three ways, just overall. You have those who are there for a check. And unfortunately, sometimes those who are there for the check get more attention than the teacher who is passionate. Or the teacher who is teaching from rut. This is what's in a book. This is what I'm supposed to teach. They don't deviate from it. But the passionate teacher, because you know they're going to get the job done, no matter what, they're going to show up. They're there early. They take additional responsibilities because they're not there just for a check. They're not there just to teach math or English or music, because we teach so much more in a given day, and we teach life skills. And we're able to give that to the students, but there's a satisfaction that comes from that as well that a paycheck can't provide. You have the supportive principals, you have the school environment where I want to be in it. It doesn't matter if the day goes well or not, I want to be here, and all of that funnels back to the leadership that is there. So if leadership had more training on, as it relates to being more inclusive, not just for students and teachers, but parents as well. I don't want to say more workshops, but really develop a school environment where everyone feels appreciated and there's an equality there. And then coupled with all of that, highlight the works that they're doing, because if a teacher only hears what they're doing wrong all the time, no one wants to stay on that job. Again, this has not been my experience, but I'm privy to conversations that principals would not have, and I would not betray my peers' conversation with me, because many times it's just simply to get off their chest and to let it go. But if I was to, and final thing, because I'll keep going. Also, we as teachers have to be able to take criticism and not take it personally, which is hard. But leadership also has to be able to take criticism and not take it personally, which is hard. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what we're doing, we're in it to educate, to protect, and love these children, to provide a stable place where they know they feel safe, they're loved, they're wanted, from the high flyers to the ones who follow all the rules. When that exists, from admin to teachers to students, that's the place where educators want to continue to go.
So to answer your first question on what the potential obstacles would be, I mentioned in my testimony that many of the ideas that I had either would directly or implicitly, elevate teacher retention. And I think that some may consider, professionally developing our educators on culturally relevant pedagogy would be one of those ones that's kind of like a jump, like how could this lead to teacher retention? And so I think that, to start off with the obstacles of, implementing the development of CRP and also diversity, equity, inclusiveness, notably that even though CRP is not, this nuanced idea, there are more educators than I wish to be reflecting on that either don't know the core premises of culturally relevant pedagogy, of academic achievement, and how it's interconnected with cultural competency and socio-political consciousness. They might not have the knowledge or the skills to implement that yet. There are also mindsets out there where it's like, well, I'm teaching this standard. I don't think that I can make this a culturally relevant, lesson for the day, and, which is not true. And I just think that, there are many, many opinions that would have to be overcome in that. And I think that a big piece of that isn't just, providing the professional development that teachers need on CRP, but really working with that diversity, equity, and inclusiveness aspect of the self-work that is required for teachers each and every day, right? Like there's work that I am constantly doing that I will always do as a teacher, and also dismantle anything that is, that is leading to anything that, any oppressive behaviors that I can be doing, behaviors that are beyond me, that I can't detect in the moment. Like those are very important issues when, especially, maybe if I don't look like my students, and say something or do something that is quite oppressive, that is damaging. Like I need to have that self-work both in a personal and professional environment in order to not only, foster mindsets of change that really empower our students and place them first and meet them where they are, but it also ensures that, we are able to invest teachers in pedagogy that is fostered in DEI. And so I think that one way that we can overcome these obstacles is to, like one of my colleagues said, embrace courageous conversations and to establish equity core committees within every school in the district, so that way these courageous conversations can be had, and that we can together as teachers and as faculty really work together in placing our students first and working on our own DEI challenges and obstacles ourselves. And I think that with that structure put into place, I think that creates a fulfillment, creates a value. Teachers see value in this. Like, what I am doing is really important. What I am doing is important because it's most important for my students, it's important for myself, it's important for my colleagues. And I think that with this structure in mind, it could elevate teacher retention to a very high degree in the district.
Thank you very much. Mr. Parker.
Yes, thank you all for being here tonight. I will echo the sentiment that it is great to see male teachers being rewarded and lauded for your contributions. There are several things that you each mentioned that I just want to allow you to expound on. In this idea of retaining teachers, specifically teachers of color, each of you in your own ways discuss support and the need for greater support in allowing teachers to thrive. If you can discuss ways in which that, not necessarily just at your school currently, but you've seen that work well, and potentially areas where that may be lacking. So for instance, Mr. Hamilton, you mentioned impact. One of the things that I'm constantly hearing is like, yeah, the evaluation, the punishment is there, but where is the support following so that teachers are growing in their performance? So that's one. And then specifically, Mr. Lopez-Cardoze, you mentioned equity committees at schools.
Yes.
Can you expound on that and what you meant and what that could potentially look like?
Absolutely. Do you want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay. So at Capital City Public Charter School, we have an equity core committee that has representatives coming from our lower school, our middle school, our high school, and central office. And we operate off of a few very big missions, and that is to ensure that our professional practices with everyone that we work with, everything comes down to equity and dismantling any inequities that are in the building. So it's not just limited to teachers and thinking about, okay, well, how can we implement equitable practices, equitable environments in our classrooms. It is based on us as people, not as educators solely. And I think that with the work that we have done as an equity core committee, I've been on the committee for 1 year now. That we have made tremendous progress on family engagement, on also engaging teachers and thinking about our own teacher retention in our school, questioning how we are specifically protecting our teachers in the building, notably our teachers of color in the building, because we've been emphasizing or thinking about recruitment. Well, how are we protecting our teachers in-house, right? And so I think that adopting a structure to the ones that we do in the Equity Core Committee and thinking about the professional development, the sessions that we lead as an Equity Core Committee and as facilitators in the structure that we have could really make a tremendous difference in the school culture, can make a tremendous difference in each and every classroom, and could therefore definitely lead to that retention that we are wishing to see in the district.
So I'm going to, I guess, answer that question in two ways. One, I am part of a collaboration called Empower Male Educators of Color, and I'm also a teacher selection ambassador. Both of these opportunities allow me to have access to males of color inside the district who are teaching all the way from primary all the way up to 12th grade. The other helps me select some of the teachers for DCPS, which I've been doing for like 5 years. One of the things that kind of always caught me off guard in both of the schools I've served in DCPS is that there seems to be like this secret about what we call the essential practices, which is related to impact. As a teacher selection ambassador, I had the opportunity to study this impact rubric and kind of just make it my everyday practice because I'm using this rubric to hire people. But I thought, like, well, why don't my colleagues have this information? If I have it, we use this, like, why can't they study it? Why can't they practice? So I started bringing it to work and started like saying, hey guys, I'm holding a essential practice 1 today. I'm upstairs, I'm holding it for 2, I'm holding it for 3, I'm holding it for 4. And I started getting feedback from some principals saying like, well, why are you doing this? And it kind of, and I was like, but this is not a caught you bad moment. We want everybody to do well, right? Hence the whole program I'm trying to push for the summertime. Because I don't understand that if you want teachers to do well, then you give them the tools, not to say that I'm going to study to the test. You say, how do I understand this big beast right here that you're using to evaluate me and still embody all of the things that these two gentlemen just said? So I've always gone as a district course chair, I'll go and I meet teachers from Garrison, Janney, all the different places, and everybody has a different experience. And I say, hey, I know I'm doing this PD, well, guess what? I'm going to talk to you about these essential practices. And I know everybody wants to talk about impact. And then soon everybody puts everything away, like, yeah, let's talk. And then I give them these extra tools. And then next thing I know, people are making great gains and making great success because we talk throughout the year. Did a PD in, let's say, in September, and here we are in February, and we're sharing lesson plans, and we're collaborating, and we're talking about these different components, something that they're not having access to inside the school year. And to me, that's so shocking. Because you shouldn't have to, if you could be inside a school around impact season, what we call it, and you know that an administrator is coming around, I'm pretty sure you saw it on the news, you've heard the stories, and I'm pretty sure people have been in here, it's very stressful. Like, I've seen coworkers have anxiety attacks, I've seen them cry, I've seen them, before and even after. And for me, it's like, let's not have this. Let's use this tool as a way to improve instruction. So while I value that measurement tool, I think we need to measure effectiveness in our teachers. But I don't think that it should be something that is scare tactic or something that teachers should be afraid of. Hence is why I think there should be a mentor program that couples impact together to support teachers throughout the year, regardless of your evaluation. And if I add just this other thing, in the proposal, I don't think, kill me, I don't think that new teachers in years 0 to 3 should have an evaluation that counts against them. So right now, currently, you can opt in to get this reward bonus money, or you could be in danger of losing your job. I think that if you're in 0 to 3 years of teaching, you should say, hey, I'm new, this is scary, I want this tool, I want to be a part of it, but I'm opting into the program to just grow this entire time. I'm not opting in to receive the money, and I'm also not in danger of losing my job. I just want to be in this range. I hope that helps.
Thank you for that. I will likely follow up about that training program.
Okay.
What's your name again? Justin. I was trying to think of his name. Justin said something that I think is key as it relates to having men of color being educators and retaining them. And that is I've been very careful about, how I've been saying everything, but we have to have an environment where everyone knows how to talk to everyone. I can't use specifically what he says. And what I mean by that is I believe in leadership, whether it's a male or female. But unfortunately, the reality is if I'm African American and, no, let's change mine. If I am Latin American, he's African American. And if he's addressing me, but is addressing me where it's appropriate for him as an African American to say certain things, but it's not appropriate in my culture. So that cultural sensitivity part, that goes a long way. And it plays on whether or not men of color want to come back and work at a particular campus or a particular school, because it might feel like they have been demasculated, or they might feel like I've been offended as it relates to me being a person of color, or just a person who's a minority overall. And so those are the things that need work on, just across the board, whether public charter or public, so that more men of color would want to stay. I'm always saying I'll follow a man or woman, no matter where they lead me, as long as they're strong and as long as they respect me and value me. And if you give us those things, then you probably will retain more men of color or in the minority group.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Mr. Jacobson.
Thank you, Mr. Executive Director, and thank you all for being here. Certainly very inspirational and aspirational for many young teachers that are aspiring teachers who are coming out of college and who are currently some of your students. I stick to the rules. Oh, I only get 3 minutes to start. How important is it that our teaching staff, our school staff, and our leadership reflect the student body?
Oh my God, yeah. So there's a book by Dr. Aubrey Tosin. It's called No BS, which means no bad stats about you not believing every bad thing about black people. It's an amazing book, so I'm just going to put that out there first. And then secondly, I would like to say that the in-group and how you identify yourself is so essential to the point that in roles where I've seen myself just doing something just by being a black male alone and serving I had 30 students last year, 22 girls and 8 boys. The girls, I just lost with them. But those 8 boys, literally everything that I did, Whether I put my pencil in my ear or walked a certain way, twisted my hair, I caught them doing it in different times. The way I responded or said something, I found myself being a surrogate father. I've heard my students call me daddy. I've heard them refer to me as uncle. I have the same students that I have in my mentorship program. I decided that it doesn't make sense for me to continue to have a different group every year. I need to track these young boys, young men, all the way throughout high school. So some of those same students that I taught when they were in 5th grade are now in 11th grade. They talk about how they would like to have, that they think I'm rich. I'm far from rich, I'm a teacher. But they would like to see how I do things the way I do it. The language, the related, like, it goes beyond. But I'll use the example. I have teachers who are not black, who cannot, they are afraid to have the conversation, they're afraid to say something, they worry about what the parent is gonna say, they worry about how the student is gonna respond. And I can walk by and literally the kid is just stopped. The student just stopped and he's not doing what he's doing. I think that speaking to Justin's point about like that equity piece and being able to have the courageous conversation and knowing when to say, I don't know what I'm doing in this moment. I need your help. And then being able to get students to foster that conversation to say, hey, you didn't treat this teacher the right way and tell me why. I've literally had students say, well, I didn't talk to her because she was white. Or I didn't talk to him because this, and that. DC is known and still known as Chocolate City. And because of that, a lot of kids, they have a lot of this culture that they are trying to hold on to. And I see it. And they sometimes feel that it's been robbed from them. I've literally used my voice to foster those conversations and re-invite that same teacher that you offended back into the space to get them to have the conversation. And the teacher is crying, but the student is not. And the teacher is shaking, but the student is very confident in who he is, but the teacher is not. And so it just goes back to everything that Justin was saying, and I think it is essential, like, you get my point.
I'll deviate just a tad from my peer, just a little. I think as long as the student body is reflected with the teachers that are in the school, you can be just as effective. There may be times, though, for example, if you have a school that is predominantly African American, you might need an African American male or female as being the principal of the school, but still there needs to be some type of diversity there because then we run into the problem of we're having schools that are segregated without us trying to segregate our schools, and that's an issue. My school is multicultural, and we're represented in the staff, even though my leadership is not of my ethnic group, but she knows how to speak to everyone in the school in such a way to where it's respectful. Or she might, or he might hold a conversation on the side to bounce off ideas to make sure that it's going to come off the right way. And like you do at your school, everyone at my school is responsible for the rearing and educating of every student in that building. So whether that child is African American, whether that child is Hispanic, we're all taking responsibility. So I agree to an extent that it plays a part, but I think what's most important is making sure, whether in leadership or in the staff, that the community we serve is represented in the leadership and in the teachers who serve in that community.
I think it is foundational, essential, whatever adjective that you want to use, to have a staff that shares as many social and identity markers as possible with our students. It comes down to affinity, right? Like if, I identify as white presenting Latino, right? And I share the language, the culture, the experiences of many of the Salvadoran, particularly Salvadoran students that I teach. There is that added trust, added comfort that students can see a face that looks like theirs, a language that sounds like theirs, experiences that mimic theirs when they were their age. I think that it takes the relationship building piece of what we do as teachers to the level that our students deserve. And I know that it's not just about race, it's about other markers. I can openly share that, that my last name is Lopez-Cardoze. I got married earlier this year, and I had to come out to my students because I was going to change my last name. And of course, I was incredibly nervous about that. I was nervous about, like, what are my kids going to think of me? What are my family's going to think of me? The ones, I haven't had the need to be open about my sexual orientation ever. And it turns out that although that this was something that I was not being completely forthcoming and open about, that this opened the doors to many of my students feeling safe to talk to me about coming out. And therefore having that affinity and that trust for markers that you can show easily that are very visible and those that aren't so visible can have a tremendous impact on everyone, myself included. I think that it is absolutely foundational to really ensure that there is representation that really mirrors our student body in the district. It is essential in order for us to continue being progressive and in order to continue ensuring that we are meeting our students where they are.
Thank you all. I'm sorry, my time is way over. We'll say I did not take my husband's name when I got married in December. And growing up in the Dakotas in the 80s and 90s, I did not have any out staff that I was aware of at my schools. And I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so glad that you're teaching, all three of you. And I'm glad that you're reflective of your student body and the students you serve. Thank you.
Dr. Sutter.
Thank you. I'll thank all of you for everything you've said so far. I've got copious notes down here. I was a former board member at Center City, so I'm super delighted to be here. And I taught middle school for 7 years, so I'm very
awesome.
excited. And please, Mr. Harrison, do not let that in the least, Hamilton.
It's okay.
Put you out of that group because I'm in awe. And the question I want to ask of all of you is, it's quite clear from your conversations with us tonight that your focus is on teaching as a professional role. And everything you've said is quite clear about this notion of the professionalism of teachers, whether it's taking the initiative to say, I see this problem in my field, I see this problem with my colleagues, and I'm going to hold these workshops because I've got a solution. Not because anyone asked me to, not because anyone told me to, but because that's what you do as a professional. And you all seem to have this pattern of systems thinking. In the solutions you offered in your prepared testimony, you talked about, Mr. Hamilton, the idea of housing community-based organizations in schools, and that being sort of a way to connect systems. You talked about the idea of having these annual panels of middle school teachers from across the district talking about the particular pervasive problems facing middle school educators in middle schools. And then, Mr. Spruill, you talked specifically around this idea of adopting an egalitarian system for the distribution of wealth in education. So, knowing how difficult working systems is, talk to me a little bit about what we can do to assist with making some of those ideas happen. How do you, from inside the system, see those of us sitting around and above being enablers that help accomplish some of these things?
Well, I don't know if I was quite aware of all the power that you guys have. Like, it kind
we have very little, but we do have a lot of loud voices.
So the loud voice is a big thing. There's nothing like a teacher voice in any room. I definitely think just the idea of pushing these points to our schools and to our chancellors and to the powers to be. Like, I'll give an example. Stanton Elementary School is a community-based organization, and very much needed. And I think that all of our schools reflect that in many corners of DC, all these different heartbeats. Langley, Weekly Education Campus, they all could benefit from a community-based organization. I think someone different seeing it and having that spotlight allows them to go and know that you can do this. We often will do the work for you. We just need a face. Like how Mr. Party said, he's going to ask me about my proposal. There'll be just another person bringing it back to the chancellor. So thank you.
I think there needs to be a sense of shared power within the structure of the school that we are in, and then those who are monitoring the schools and shaping and helping to get things by. If I have my own business, but just because I own the business don't mean that I know everything as relates to how to run that business effectively. There's a shared sense of responsibility for its success. The fact that the board, I see principals, when you put yourself in a position to where you say, I don't have the answers, and you're reaching out and you're taking the information, that's not enough, and which is I was leading up to. A lot of times it seems like the suggestions are made, but no real change is made. Everything, I know we need the funding for schools and allocate funds. All those things are important. However, if we knocked out some of the smaller issues first, or in the midst of tackling some of the greater discrepancies or lack of inequalities that exist, then there's a greater picture of, okay, my voice was heard. I feel like I now have input some type of powers relate to change, and people can move along with you. Whereas it takes 5 years in order to see the change that is happening, to want to stay with the vision so that we can actually say, okay, we did it. And with Center City, I appreciate a lot, and I'm glad I did stay. And I'll use my organization as an example. When we converted from being parochial to being public charter, it wasn't an easy transition. However, those who left gave suggestions but didn't stay to see the vision come to pass, or at least some of the things that they're asking for to happen. But there's a communication that was happening from top to bottom and vice versa. In time, though, the little things that were being asked for was given, so that we can see, okay, now we're making progress, let's do a little bit more. So I think from the top down is recognizing that it is shared power and it's a shared responsibility. Because even if you work in an office at DC headquarters, you still have a responsibility to educate the students even though you're not teaching them. But we're doing the groundworks, we're in the classroom, so listen to what the teachers are saying, given to the principals or whoever is passing on the information, then making an effort, or say this the right way, to where it looks more like, yeah, you're getting it, and not just say it and it doesn't happen, if that makes sense. So that everyone will continue to buy in, so those structures and everything that needs to be in place will really be there.
So, first of all, I sincerely appreciate the willingness to think about, okay, what can I do as a board member? That's something that I'm truly grateful that I'm truly grateful for. And you know, as cliche or as simple as it may sound, think about the things that we have said this evening, and either in your current experiences or what you have experienced in the past. Think about what truly inspires you. Think about something that you're like, that definitely resonates with me. Like that's, everything that has been mentioned here this evening has been very special, but what is that one thing that that person said that I am like, yes, I want to be a part of that. That is, if you are not fully invested in the things that we have said, and it's something that which is understandable because there are going to be some things that you might not be like, But think about what truly inspires you in the work that you do, and think about what you can particularly do, whether that means that you're working by yourself, whether that means that you are working, with a task force like I suggested in my testimony, and creating the initiatives to honor our teachers in the district, to ultimately elevate teacher retention. So that's my first answer. And then my second answer is to come to our schools and show face, come to our classrooms, talk to our students, talk to our teachers, talk to our school leaders, teacher leaders, and engage in, conversation, whether that is formal or informal. And to really get as many perspectives as you can on that one or two things that really inspires you. So that way you can think about, okay, what are the innovative ways so that I can do my work, that I can do my work in a task force or in a group? What are innovative ways that I can continue my work with the panelists sitting here in order to lead to the outcomes that you aspire to reach? And so those are just a few of my thoughts on that question. And I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Williams.
Thank you. I know you've been asked many, many questions tonight, and you've given excellent answers that will really help the board moving forward and looking at this issue. So I'm going to keep my questions short and sweet. When you walked into your classrooms the first day, they were not the classrooms that you're now teaching in. You did not have the skills, knowledge, or ability to be the teacher of the year at that point, I'm sure. What did you do, or how did you work with the leadership, or how much did the leadership work with you to get you to be 2020 Teachers of the Year? What PD, what help, what supports did you have to achieve that goal?
For me, and I'm pretty sure for you guys as well, it's always been a growth mindset. Whether you're Teacher of the Year or you're not Teacher of the Year, you should always be in a place where you're growing. We are practitioners like nurses and like doctors, and so you must always remain relevant. My first year teaching, I had a very strong African-American woman who was, she was amazing. I had like the knack for teaching, but she had all the fine little knickknacks. You don't have your dry erase markers in your pocket. By the time you walk to the other side of the room, kids are making noise. So all of that kind of stuff just went in my back pocket from day one, and are things that I just kind of added to my toolkit. I also took the initiative. I don't wait for any administrator in professional development, any council member on my own. I make myself knowledgeable. I literally live and breathe what I do. So if I want to learn about something, I'm going to ask questions. And literally before I came here, this is my first time doing something like this. I'm like, hey, Caitlin, how do I do this? So I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to look on YouTube, like, was I supposed to type something up? Like, I want to know, like, what makes me be the best? The best is going to be having a different range of different students. And so I've ended my time at the Education Campus after being there for 6 years. I was at Edward Thomas for 5 years, and now I'm at Langley. Langley is no secret, it's a one-star school. I believe that I can add something to make the school have a greater improvement achievement. I know my worth. But in order to do that, the first thing I did was analyze all of Langley's data in terms of the star rating system. What did it say about this? What did it say about that? And make myself present. And so that means if I ever see one of you guys walking around, I'm going to pick your brain and ask you questions. Robert White, the council member at large, I literally have asked him several questions, whether it be in a parade or see him walking down the street. I'm like, hey, I'm going to ask him a question to learn. And so literally, I believe that it's been, and this gentleman, Justin, he said quite a lot of good things that I've heard him say. Before he walks out the door, I'm going to ask him questions, and even ask him for his card. The best teachers are always the best learners.
To build on what Mr. Hamilton said, and I agree 100% because that's me, I have a vision before the school year begins. So this year, what I'm starting, I've already started last year, planning what I want to see, what needs to happen to greatly impact these students' lives. Then it's me doing the research, doing everything that I need to do to make sure that it can happen. Then I take it to my administrators, just as Mr. Hamilton said, what do you think about this? Is this possible? If they say don't get the money, oh, I got it. Or I might hear, no, you don't got it. you know, because I want to make it happen. But there's a cooperation that happens. If I have a vision, and it's a trusting relationship as well, one where my principal trusts that I am doing what is best for the students. I'm trusting that my principal has my back, and vice principal as well, that whatever I need so that these students are prepared for life, not for music. Because even though I am a music instructor, I'm giving them skills that's going to last a lifetime. And being able to do that, I want to make sure that I'm on the same page with my administrator. But first and foremost, I take the initiative myself. Then I'm going to bounce ideas off my administrator, but I'm also looking for that feedback. And I always get the feedback that I need that pushes me a little bit more. That's when I'm satisfied. But if I go and it's just, oh, you got it, run with it, then I'm not growing. And if I'm not growing, I can't push my students. I have extremely high standards for myself and for my students. There's no such thing as I can't. They're not allowed to say that. So when I go to my administrators, it's not we can't. I always hear, let me work on it. Let me find out what I can do. And if it can't be done, we'll find a way. So first and foremost, me, then going to the administrator, and we're working together from there.
So when I think about when I first started, you know, these thoughts come across my head every now and then. I cringe because I'm like, did I say that? Did I do that? And your question just made me think about like how far I have come and also how far I have, you know, like I'm far away from where I truly want to be as a teacher. But I think that when I first started, it all came down to mentors. And so thinking about my new teacher mentor, thinking about, you know, the world history teacher that I taught across from the hall, you know, it was my assistant principal. It was just a handful of people who I would confide in and think, you know, how am I truly going to hit the ground running in my first few years of teaching? And then, you know, I came to DC and I was like, okay, I've got 4 years, you know, down my belt. I'm ready to teach in DC. And I was completely caught off guard because, one, completely different group of kids. I was teaching high school seniors and juniors, and then I just moved down to 7th graders. Move down, move up, however you want to see it, because I love my 7th graders. So there was a lot of change, but also I entered a new program, EL Education. And you know, the core practices and the pedagogy that are foundational components to EL education are much different than how I was trained on. And so with that being said, working at Capital City has been truly a transformational experience with me professionally. So I will say what has helped me out being at Capital City, because there are several structures that I believe could be incredibly helpful for teachers across the district. Number one, our professional development is highly differentiated based on where teachers are professionally, where they are in their personal goals as well. And so our instructional coach, Katie Pick, is incredible, phenomenal. She ensures that all of the professional development that we receive throughout the year is differentiated based off of where we want to work with in mastery of knowledge and skills for students, for character of students, for students developing high quality work. It is incredibly differentiated so that way your development meets you where you are as an educator. In addition to that, some of the profound professional development that I have received at my school aren't just after school. We have a weekly structure where it's been a minute because it's summer, Thursday, we have consults that are focused on one of multiple areas. It can be focused on our inclusion model. It can be focused on our culture. It can be focused on our instruction, our data, our ELL students and curricula. And it is fine-tuned to every grade level team based off of where students are. So one, the fact that that's happening on a weekly basis and that structure not having happened for me in my first few years of teaching was incredibly profound on my success at Capital City. Other areas of PD that have truly been profound on me have been centered on equity and inclusion, which is why I've emphasized it so much this this evening, thinking about how we're going to meet as equity learning communities and come together and talk about family engagement, talk about CRP, talk about inequities that exist or archetypes that exist within us as educators, and thinking about, okay, how are we going to dismantle these archetypes that are oppressional towards our students across multiple identity markers. And so not only are those PDs that have been successful, I'll make one more point, it is the PDs that have allowed me to be empowered as a teacher in the building. So thinking about what I can do as the middle school science department chair with my department. Thinking about teacher-led series is what we do at our school, and thinking about any teachers feel like they have expertise in an area that they might want to host a PD for, our school is open to that. And so again, those structures have been incredibly profound on my progress as a teacher in Capital City. Thank you.
Mr. Batchelor.
Thank you, and thank you all for taking your time and for providing this valuable knowledge. Obviously, both the breadth and depth of what you said has been extremely valuable. I had specific questions for each of you that speak a little bit to what you highlighted a bit in your testimony. First, Mr. Hamilton, you talked a lot about what schools need to adequately serve students that are bearing the brunt of our societal inequalities, and in turn, what teachers need to be successful in the classroom working in those spaces as well. And you mentioned Stanton Elementary, which is also doing, in my ward, which is also doing some very remarkable things around teacher wellness. Could you talk a little bit, and I'm just going to go down and then I'll let you all answer. Can you talk a little bit about how schools can build out opportunities for teacher wellness, for teacher mental health, for teachers who are coming to school and having to triage students who are having shootings outside their school, or those adverse effects of low-income communities? Mr. Spruill, I want to thank you because a music teacher also saved my life. Mr. Chisholm at Hardy Middle School literally changed my life when he threw a saxophone in front of me, and for all of the reasons you said and more. Can you talk, and Center City Brightwood is a small-ish school, can you talk for schools that are having difficulty, especially in the DCPS system? We have a funding issue with small schools, but where small schools are, usually students in those schools need that type of instruction and enrichment the most. Can you give some suggestions about how small schools with limited budgets, schools that are choosing between an attendance counselor or a music teacher, can help fit that instruction in? And then Mr. Lopez-Cardoze, you talked a lot about mentorship programs and really developing teachers through that. Can you maybe give us some suggestions on how we build grow your own programs and improve the pipelines for homegrown educators in our city to ensure that we're actually having a teaching staff that is fully reflective of the diversity of our city? And those are my questions, and thank you all so much.
Thank you for the question. So I literally just had this conversation with someone, like I have it all the time, and I'll just give a perfect example of it. So last school year, we got a new social worker, and when the social worker came on board, I'm on the personnel committee, and the first thing I asked her was, I said, hey, I know kids have bad days, but we have them all the time. And I said, especially me, I have 30 kids. There may be a time when I just need to just come lay my head down on your little small couch and just decompress. I'll maybe make some copies. I just want to come down there. The social worker kind of looked at me and she was like, sure. And I was like, that's either a yes or no, because it's a real thing. And it just brought me back to something that I remember someone who worked in the Army when I first started teaching. She was no longer working in the Army, but she was a therapist for post-traumatic soldiers. And she talked about how she serviced those families and the wives and all that kind of stuff. And then she said, I thought I would like to take my services to the school. So in the winter time, she would come and she would just have like all of these little kumbaya moments with teachers. And we would just get there and just let it out. Like, this is a person we didn't know. This is a person who was a trained clinician, and she was housed in our building. That always lived with me because it happened in my early years, and I always thought, like, why not have this in every school? Why not have a specific office with a specific person who is specifically for teachers, where teachers could specifically sign up and go and say, on my lunch break, I'm going to see Mr. Batchelor. And when I get there, this is what I want to talk about. I just want to kind of let some steam. There are limited times, as I said, inside a responsive school, a fight may just have broken out. Someone may just have gotten shot. And last year, one of our students died. I literally had to raise the money for this student funeral. We came back to work. It was like, hug everybody, back into the classroom. That is a lot to go back inside. It is hard to say that a kid just hit me in my face, and now he's back in my room because of the policies in place. It's hard. I need to be able to go to Mr. Batchelor, just let it off a little bit. It's a small office inside every school, small pillow, small couch, couple biscuits, some jelly, and just let us talk for a little bit. And I promise you, you will get a renewed teacher the next day, someone who was just there to say, I'm listening. I heard what you said. I can't promise you any strong outcomes, but I gave you a space to let it out. I'm not going to go and gossip. I'm not going to go and tell the principal. I'm not going to go tell the colleague that you had an argument with. I'm talking to you, and I'm really giving you an opportunity to decompress. I think that should be in every school, just like the community-based organizations. Yeah.
One idea is we used to have this model at Center City where we had enrichment teachers who would be at 2 schools, so it would be shared. Because, again, our school communities are small. So on an A week, I'm at this school, B week, I can be at another. But 2 schools assigned 1 music instructor. That way, both schools, as an option, both schools would have the benefit of having a music instructor during the day. They're not there the entire day. The teacher is still full-time, but shared between 2 schools. We've only just, in the last couple of years, got to the place to where I am able to be stationary at 1 school. But we've done this for many years, and we did it when we were parochial as well. Another option would be, instead of having maybe alternate weeks, it could be 1 semester. You offer school, this particular school music, and then another school for the 2nd semester offering as well. What this will allow is students to have access to a robust music program. Once you have a dedicated, passionate music instructor. And as time goes on, then that can be built upon to where eventually that music instructor will either be at 1 school, or the students still are getting the same information. They're just getting it in 1 semester. By the time they get to high school, if they're going to a high school that offers a music program, they can build on that knowledge. However, if there is nothing being offered, then they're going into high school. If they desire to play an instrument, whatever it might be, then they're behind everyone else because they weren't given access, whether because the school was small or administrators might not have felt it a need to provide the arts. But students need the arts in more ways than I can advocate for social, health, mental reasons. It's an out. It's a moment to stop, to be able to breathe and allow yourself to be expressed through whatever that art might be. So those are 2 options. One can be semester, shared schools, or it could be alternating week, again, with shared schools, but the students would get a music education.
Thank you for your question. So some of the ideas that I have in ensuring that our staff are representing our students and looking like them and sharing the culture, sharing race, sharing ethnicity, is to actually start in our schools, thinking about developing bridge programs for our students in the district today. In our high schools who are invested in, there are many students who want to become teachers. Many of them are also of color. And so thinking about, okay, how can I pilot a bridge program in my school where a student can shadow a teacher from the perspective of being a teacher And being a teacher locally in DC, like what does it take to be a teacher in our district or in this board specifically, and really invest our students in being educational leaders later on. I would also say that, unfortunately, in my experiences, being in education, the voices of our families tend to get lost on this topic, right? So really thinking about, okay, how can we survey our families or host family events to get their perspectives on the importance of having native DC educators, namely DC educators who are Black, African American, Latinx. How can we get them into our classrooms to serve our students? Other methods that I can think of off the top of my head are we are placed in a geographically advantageous area of this country where we have many, many universities, many diverse universities. We have HBCUs. We have such a big set of people who we can reach out to and recruit on our college campuses and universities. And thinking about, are you native to DC, or are you thinking about staying in DC because you're inspired by this community, or you feel like you could really become an integral part of this community? Come on in. Right? Come on into our classrooms, make your classroom, and really provide the service, the love, the care that our students truly do need. Those are some of my top of head ideas, and I would be willing to work with anyone on the board and would be really interested in hearing any ideas that anyone has on this area to really hone in on this foundational necessity of what our students need in our schools. Thank you.
Ms. Wattenberg.
Thank you. I'm going to go, I'm also going to do different questions, and I'm going to go right in a row, so you have to answer when I ask, as opposed to having a chance to think. So I'm actually going to start with Mr. Spruill, or Dr. Spruill, and I wanted to ask, I'm going to go back to the very beginning and talk about music. And I'm curious, one of the issues that is sort of a priority for this board is what we call well-rounded education, rich curriculum, and what we hear a lot is that kids aren't getting this. So I want to ask you, how much time do your kids get music in a week, in a month, in a whatever?
My primary students, well, pre-K 3 through kindergarten, 30 minutes twice a week. One first, second grade, if I'm not mistaken, it might be a little bit off. I think it's 45 minutes too, depending, maybe 3 times a week. And then 3 through 5, and 60 minutes twice a week. And then middle school, 60 minutes, about an hour and 45 minutes, but that's broken up within twice a week. Trying to remember last year's schedule.
And one other question on that, is it a mix of voice and instrument? Do you do,
yes.
you do
So
both
at
of
my
them different
campus,
grades? Or?
I offer, so their regular music class, they'll receive the theory. Along with the theory, then I'm introducing them from pre-K 3 through 8th grade, everyone sights reads. So we have one keyboard for everyone in the class to be able to use. Of course, it's measured out based on skill set and age and et cetera, et cetera. But we offer that in class. We also offer other instruments where the entire class can use instrumental. But then we have band that we have for our middle school students where they can sign up for what we call an elective. And if they choose to sign up for an elective band with me, then they have an instrument that's assigned to them. They don't have to go out and rent one. We have all the instruments so that they can choose. They have it for the entire year. Last year was the first year where I had music in the morning at 7:30 a.m. and students were there from band to be able to practice. And then they had band during the school day as well. And if I needed additional practice after school, I would do that. So we have choir, we have band, we have theory, one-stop shopping.
All right, sounds great. Quick question for Mr. Hamilton. How does that compare to music in your school? Which I realize you're not a music teacher, but do you know how often, how long your kids do music? If you don't,
No,
know,
no,
that's
no,
okay,
no.
I'm just
I
curious.
do. I know how long my students have music, but just compared to that, that was just magical. I mean, we do a lot of those things, but I just was particularly listening to the sight reading, which is amazing because it relates to math and 4/4 time and double time. I think my students have about 45 minutes to an hour, and I was only thinking about it that way because I was thinking about my planning time. So in a lot of ways, when teachers drop their students off to specials, that's our time to go to planning. So I don't always necessarily focus on what's happening in music.
But so
I wasn't a
typically it
band,
would
though.
be 45 minutes a week, like one
Yeah.
planning period a week, they'd be in.
At a different special each day. So I had, PE, Spanish, music, library or media, and they would go for like between 45 minutes to an hour a day.
And Mr. Lopez-Cardoze, same question.
So I have to kind of talk this out in order for it to make sense. So how this works is we have a system for 7th grade. There are about 86, don't quote me on that, 7th graders, and they get to choose which specials that they take, either when we're talking about the arts, MIT art, music, and drama. So suppose I am a 7th grader and I am really invested in music, and I am also really invested in art. I will take music in the first semester every day for 48 minutes a day. Then
Starting at the earliest grades?
Say that one more time.
Starting at because you start in pre-K, did you say? No, not you, but the school.
Oh, yeah. No, so, okay, so the 3 campuses, the lower school, I really don't know, and the high school, I really don't know. I can only speak on behalf of the middle school. But referring to the 4 grade levels that we have in our middle school building, I can speak for the 7th graders that they have that 48 minutes of music if they so choose to be in music for that special in semester 1, and then in semester 2 they take art, they don't take any music. So about half of our students take music because they're truly invested in it, and the other half might not. And so that is the same for 8th grade. Not 100% sure, I don't want to say anything inaccurate for 5th and 6th grade, but I would assume that it has adopted a very similar structure, and if it hasn't, then it will.
You guys are very good for things that you weren't an expert at. I'm going to have one other question for you, which is around impact. And you gave, we all hear about impact.
Sure.
We all get comments on it. We get complaints about it.
Right.
And so it's very interesting to hear people talk about it. And one question I wanted to put to you was, I hear a lot, and I think we all do, that it feels very disproportionately unfair to teachers who are in schools with more at-risk kids, that there's something about the evaluation itself that leads to lower scores. And I just wonder if you think that's true, you think that's not true, and if so, why, or if so, why people might think that.
I can't answer that question without providing some context. Can I provide a little? So again, I've only worked in responsive schools, and it's not something that I necessarily just say that I've just applied for, but I kind of gravitate to them. It's where I feel the best, not necessarily where I fit, but it's almost like a superhero. Like, I don't want to go to a school where students are in kindergarten and reading on 5th grade level. Like, I kind of want to go where I know that I can see that impact at least by 2nd grade or 3rd grade. I was formerly a special education teacher. So that being said, I have had the opportunity to interact. Well, I've been a part of a cohort where we had something called DC3, where we've interacted with schools like Janney and Mann, or not Mann, but Janney or Maury, for example. And I have heard different narratives of how these teachers feel and just the interactions with them overall and in general. I would not say that the scores need to be lowered, but I do think that the perspective and the outcome, because these are people who are implementing an objective tool subjectively, for lack of better words. Last year I had a score of 383 points. This year I had a score of 354. I barely made it, and I was running up for Teacher of the Year. It's intense. I'm not going to lie about that, but I do appreciate the value of knowing that I'm being held to a certain standard. I will say there also is a difference. There is a significant difference in terms of the expectations or just the feeling or the notion of working in like what's said like a secondhand trauma school or a responsive school, and the way you may have to wrap yourself around behavioral challenges. You may not get that time to get that instruction ready like you can at another school because you're really gearing up. For me, for example, I start with my parents. I've already did like 2 or 3 home visits. I have great connections with my parents and their families, and this is where I start first to let them know that I'm a no-nonsense type of person. This is how I interact. I need to get them ready. It's almost like a performance, and it's the only way I can say it. It literally is a performance. But in order for the performance, you got to get the people ready for the show. And in order to get the people ready for the show, they need to know how to have perfect practice. My band artist told me it's not practice, it's perfect practice. You practice like it's the day of the show. And so every day is like that inside that classroom. But there's a difference between working with kids who are 3, 4 grade levels below. Challenges between homelessness and trauma or behavior and everything else, and then a person who is directly across the street, walking distance, and they have all the resources, and they have parents who are on this board or this person, and they have all the different resources that they need, and the students are just not coming in from the door with that type of ACE level chart. So you're not responding the way it's coming in, but here it comes. Impact evaluation, 30 minutes, and you have a kid who's doing a whole lot. I have had, like I said, the opportunity to condition myself and adapt to this tool and also be true to the students that I serve. I let them, when I was in the running for Teacher of the Year, I told them it was for them. It wasn't for me. And so that mindset, it has created this segregation between, I'm pretty sure you've heard this, schools east of the river and this and that. Like, and I've seen this as a teacher, facilitator, and a district course chair, professional development. I've seen teachers say, well, we don't have any of those problems, and I don't know what you're talking about, this, and this. And then I've seen teachers in the same sitting say they have them and they cry, and just having to be in the middle of that and having to decide where do you fit is very challenging. So I would say, no, don't completely change the standard. There should be effective and strong teachers. And I'll probably get a lot of slack from WTU. But at the same time, have a perspective that says there is a line of equity. There is a big difference between kids who sleep at night every day with both parents, who eat food every day, who are not coming through the door from a parent who was screaming at them, who are not experiencing some form of trauma, who's not meeting with CFSA in the summertime, at summer school, who are not having a social worker not respond to their needs, and then you go inside and then you're facilitating. Difference to you're teaching life skills to a 5th grader. There is a big difference, and I've been teaching for almost 15 years now. 11 of those years have been with DCPS and have been with Impact.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you so much to all of you. Now, normally we just do 3-minute rounds, but our timekeeper was very generous, and we are very grateful for that. So I'm going to ask people if they thought they were going to get another round, you can have a very quick comment or question. We're not going to do another full round, but anybody want to?
Mr. Hamilton, if you, under a minute, if you could just briefly characterize what you meant by the impact of gentrification on your teaching. And so I know, for instance, at Langley, that's a big issue, but I just wanted to hear more.
Right, so I'll be new coming to Langley. So there's a difference between not having a PTA and then being down the street from J.L. Wilson, who has a really strong PTA, and then come to Langley, who I now know that majority of their PTA does not represent the schools inside the building. Resources stop. So the PTA, the kids are usually like, oh, in pre-K 3 and going up, and then 1st grade, and all of a sudden they don't want to go to school anymore. For me, that's a problem, because whatever resources were available, if you can't answer the question of saying, would you, as a teacher, send your child to the school, and if as a parent, you looking ahead at the trajectory of where your student's going to go, you should provide that same aid, that same support, that same strengthening, and supporting teachers throughout the building or parents throughout the building, and open up that door. And I feel like, for some reason, it stops. And I've seen this in many other schools where after first grade or even after kindergarten, the parents decide that the school is no longer a fit. And then they just go elsewhere. I don't think that that's fair or equitable.
I've just got one thing. I want to thank y'all for everything you've said, for inspiring us to know that there is hope. And a quote from a famous educator, "This is the business we chose."
Thank you. So one thing we would like to do, if this is okay, is to do a photo with the whole group and the three of you.
Yes.
So we're going to just take a little break. We're going to go down there, take a photo, and then.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
It's nice meeting you, Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate
I learned a lot
it.
from you guys. Thank you so much.
Likewise.
We have a lot in common too, so thank you so much. Yeah.
At the core of us.
Can I get in the back? They have like blazers and stuff.
No, don't worry about it. Yeah. If you guys want to be front and center, yeah. So everybody's going to gather back there.
Okay.
All right. We're coming back to order. Thanks again to our guests. Oops. We're coming back. Okay. Yes. We're coming back to order. Thanks again to our guests. It was terrific. All right. Each year, this is now on the FY2021 budget. Each year, the State Board of Education is required to submit a need for appropriations to the mayor for inclusion in her budget request to the council. Fiscal year 2021 does not actually begin until October 1, 2020, but we must submit the budget far in advance so there is time for the mayor to review it before she submits it to the council. The State Board's FY 2021 need for appropriation is based on the budget approved for the year that begins in October, this coming October. It is just over $2 million and includes funds for the salaries and programs of the State Board, the Office of the Ombudsman for Public Education, and the Office of the Student Advocate. It includes funds to continue the State Board's research and increases funds available for translation and interpretation services for the 3 offices of the State Board. The resolution before us also includes a list of enhancements, that is new funding to support programs and employees to enhance and expand the work of our 3 offices. I'd like to turn to our Vice President and Chair of the Administrative Committee, Marcus Batchelor, for a motion on the resolution. Mr. Batchelor?
Madam President, so moved.
Is there a second? The motion having been properly moved and seconded, the resolution will be read into the record. Mr. Hayworth?
State Board of Education Resolution, DC State Board of Education Fiscal Year 2021 Need for Appropriations Resolution, SR 19-6. Whereas in 2013, the District of Columbia Council approved the State Board of Education Personnel Authority Amendment Act of 2012, effective April 27, 2013, to ensure that the District of Columbia State Board of Education had the authority to operate as an independent agency, including through the hiring of its own staff and preparing its own budget. Whereas DC Official Code 38-2652D3 reads, beginning in fiscal year 2013, the board shall prepare and submit to the mayor for the inclusion in the annual budget prepared and submitted to the council pursuant to Part D of Subchapter 4 of Chapter 2 of Title I, annual estimates of the expenditures and appropriations necessary for the operation of the board for the year. All the estimates shall be forwarded by the mayor to the council for, in addition to the mayor's recommendations, action by the council pursuant to 1-204.46 and 1-206.03, subparagraph C. Whereas the DC State Board of Education staff have prepared a budget that reflects the need for appropriations to meet the priorities of the 3 offices of the State Board: the Office of the State Board of Education, the Office of the Ombudsman for Public Education, and the Office of the Student Advocate in fiscal year 2021. Whereas the proposed fiscal year 2020 budget and related enhancements have been discussed at working sessions of the DC State Board of Education on June 5th, 2019 and July 2nd, 2019. Whereas the DC State Board of Education is appreciative of the trust placed in it by its residents and shall remain open and transparent about its spending. Whereas in the fiscal year that begins on October 1st, 2020, the DC State Board of Education proposes a need for appropriation of $2,295,154.47, with $520,071 being spent on program activities and the remainder on personnel in accordance with the attached chart. And whereas the DC State Board of Education proposes $655,000 in additional appropriations for the agency in the form of enhancement requests, and confirms that these requests would amplify and extend the capabilities of the agency. Now therefore be it resolved that on July 17th, 2019, the State Board approves its fiscal year 2021 need for appropriations and enhancements, and requests that the mayor include in her annual budget submission the estimate approved herein.
Thank you. Discussion on the resolution?
Madam President?
Yes.
Because the at-large member is not present here because she just had a baby, she has sent me a statement that I'd like to read on her behalf, if that's appropriate.
Thank you, and if you're watching, congratulations to Board Member Ashley MacLeay.
In regards to the budget resolution, I, Ashley MacLeay, am voting in favor of the resolution. However, I'm noting disapproval of the cost of living enhancement attached in the budget enhancement package. As a representative of this board and as taxpayer of Washington, D.C., I do not support the cost of living enhancement for the State Board of Education, As stated last year when this enhancement was first introduced, the $15,000 currently budgeted for each board member is a stipend, not a salary, and was initially put into place to offset travel and transportation expenses members incur while performing board duties in their official capacity as elected representatives. While the stipend of the board has not changed since the creation of the board more than a decade ago, neither have the responsibilities changed. While some board members have argued that this increase will assist economically disadvantaged citizens to become engaged as public servants, I disagree. This increase will do little in rectifying any change in this area. If the true underlying goal and mission of the increase is for this purpose, then I believe there are other ways to assist and would like to work with members to create real change for all to run and be welcomed onto this board. However, the extra $400 this increase gives per member does very little in the way of assisting and or working towards the intended mission. Additionally, as I provided when this enhancement was first introduced, research by NASB indicates that no other state in the country pays their Board of Education members as much as the District of Columbia, and many states members are not compensated and are only reimbursed for expenses. Whether this is entitled a cost of living increase, salary increase, or simply a raise, an increase now in the wake of contentious school budget process that our city recently underwent, in my view, is fiscally irresponsible, bad optics, and disappointing. In sum, this $4,070 can be put to better use and is not in the best interests of the students, taxpayers, and residents of the District of Columbia. Thank you.
Additional discussion?
Madam President?
Ms. Gasoi?
I just would like to say, as the representative for Ward 1, one of the most diverse wards in the city, and that includes language diversity, that I am pleased with the increase in funding for translation and interpretation, and I look forward to working with Mr. Hayward to hash out policy for that.
Excellent. Other discussion? Mr. Batchelor?
Madam President, I just wanted to take a second to thank our staff and also the leadership in the Office of the Student Advocate and Office of the Ombudsman for working hard to put this budget proposal and need for appropriation together. Obviously, it's a very quick turnaround from one budget cycle to the next, and I know that they put a lot of time and effort into ensuring that, one, we're good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars, but that, two, they're also focusing on what additional investments we can make to better serve the students and families of the District of Columbia. And so I wanted to just take the time to acknowledge that effort and thank them for their work during this process.
Madam President, I'd like to echo what the Vice President just shared, and also add that I'm delighted that our team has put together a budget that includes a request for additional funds to deal with to hire a staff member who will deal with standards review, as one of the statutory functions of the State Board is to approve state standards, and we know that that's something that we have not had the chance to do with some of our standards, say for instance the social studies standards, for a while. I'm delighted that we've taken an approach and made an effort to have the possibility of a staff member added to support that important work.
Thank you. Other discussion? Okay. Seeing no further discussion, the motion is on approval of SR 19-6, the SBOE FY2021 budget. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion carries. At our March public meeting, the State Board established a list of priorities to help define our activities and guide budget development. The State Board also established working groups around these priorities to provide members a chance to talk them through and identify specific initiatives the Board could undertake to address them. These groups have each met several times this spring, and their emerging ideas have been discussed by members at the Board's working sessions, most especially the one in July, a couple of weeks ago. Tonight I'm introducing SR 19-7 to formalize the recommended work we are undertaking on key projects, especially those involving funded research. But to be clear, members will continue to discuss and offer input on these issues and projects, and I'm sure recommend additional projects over time. I move the resolution. Is there a second? Oh, I know what I was going to say. I'm sorry. What I wanted to say is the resolution in front of us is this, the same as what we looked at prior to our working session on this, with two big exceptions. There might be some minor ones, but the big exceptions are we altered the timelines for social studies to try to move them up a bit, yet understanding that we have a staffing issue, so they're sort of somewhere in between what different people had hoped for. And we made clear that the second one of the research projects is specifically around the implementation of standards, likely around looking at assignments in second grade, but again, to be continued. And those deal with the particular issues that were raised last time around. So with that, the motion having been moved and seconded, the resolution will now be read into the record.
Sorry, Madam President, couldn't you recall who was the second?
Oh, I'm sorry. Who is the second?
Second.
Thank you. State Board of Education resolution on the implementation of working group proposals, SR 19-7. Whereas the State Board is committed to facilitating research aimed at increasing public awareness and understanding of the quality of public education in the District of Columbia and supporting its improvement, especially for our most vulnerable students. Whereas the District of Columbia's teacher turnover rate of 25% is higher than the national average, and the rate at our highest poverty schools is even higher at roughly 1/3 each year. Whereas evidence shows that high-quality teaching develops over time, that strong school culture, strong relationships between and among staff and families, and other outcomes associated with longer teacher retention benefit students, and that constant churn hurts it. Whereas national reports have suggested that many students disproportionately those who are Black, brown, and/or low income are not getting a full, rich curriculum beyond English language arts and mathematics instruction, that these students often receive and complete school assignments that ask less of them, and that these less rigorous, narrower assignments are one reason that their achievement is lower. Whereas only 1 in 3 district students are proficient in reading comprehension, and one key pillar of comprehension is strong background knowledge built from exposure to and instruction in social studies, science, and the arts. Whereas reading and math skills alone are not sufficient for success in college careers and life. And whereas the Every Student Succeeds Act calls for every student to receive a well-rounded education, including robust instruction in social studies, science, and the arts. Whereas the District of Columbia's academic standards establish rigorous grade-level benchmarks in math, English language arts, social studies, science, and the arts, all of which are important for district students' preparedness for college and careers. Whereas the State Board convened 4 working groups on teacher retention, well-rounded education, research, and social studies standards to consider these issues and propose relevant projects for the State Board to pursue. Whereas having met on a regular basis throughout 2019, the working groups have developed recommendations and suggested priorities for the consideration of the State Board. Whereas these and other proposals were considered by State Board members at multiple working sessions and working groups of the State Board. And whereas those proposals are now contained in the State Board project plan attached to this resolution. Now therefore be it resolved that the State Board undertake the following work per the State Board project plan. In the area of teacher retention, survey former teachers in traditional public and public charter schools to better understand the causes of teacher turnover in the district, and especially the disproportionately high rate of teacher turnover at schools with high percentage of at-risk students. Survey current teachers about their motivations for staying at their schools, factors influencing their decisions, and recommendations for increasing teacher retention. Pursue a statewide policy for the collection and public reporting of standardized data on teacher turnover. In the area of state education standards, undertake research to understand the extent to which PK-5 students are exposed to and taught state standards, with a special focus on exposure to social studies, science, and the arts through a review of school schedules and surveys and/or focus groups of teachers and principals. Understand the extent to which students across the city are exposed to comparable assignments and demonstrate comparable work in those assignments, especially in English language arts, and do so in consultation with an advisory group representing key stakeholder groups. In the area of measuring school quality, prepare a report on high school growth based on State Board hearings and research, and a research review of how school quality is measured, alternative ideas, and options for such measurement, and the strengths and weaknesses of these measures. In the area of social studies, develop a multi-year work plan including extensive collaboration with OSSE and a diverse set of stakeholders that will ultimately result in revised and updated state social studies standards for the district that are culturally inclusive, impart important social studies content in the early grades, anti-racist, strengthen student knowledge of democratic principles and values, and promote civic engagement. Design a process including anticipated budget and staff needs for selecting advisory group and writing group members, and leading the groups through the review, revision, and drafting of updated social studies standards that can be considered by the State Board for potential adoption in the beginning of the 2022-2023 school year. Convene a social studies advisory group to support this effort in 2020, and, assuming adequate staffing, convene a social studies standards writing group in 2020. Be it further resolved that across these efforts, the State Board will work to engage stakeholders as advisors, whether informally or through formal advisory groups, with the goal of incorporating diverse perspectives into research efforts. Be it further resolved that as appropriate, the State Board may pursue multiple projects through the same mechanisms, such as a single survey of teachers on multiple issues, or an advisory group designed to provide information or feedback on multiple issues.
Is there discussion on the motion?
I have a question about line 78. It says impart important social studies content in the early grades, and then anti-racist that's an adjective, right?
I think it's an awkward wording, Dr. O'Leary. I think it's meant to be that will ultimately result in revised and updated state social studies standards for the district that are culturally inclusive, that are anti-racist, that impart important social studies content in the early grades, that strengthen student knowledge. So I think it may be out of order there.
Okay, so I mean that can be fixed, right? Okay. Then so if that can be fixed, do we just sort of assume it's going to be fixed?
Yes.
If we're voting on it?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Mr. Jacobson?
Thank you, Madam President, and I will be voting for this resolution. I'm going to raise an issue that I raised at a couple of working sessions in our hopes that we can come to a place of shared leadership with the board members that are here in terms of naming committee chairs. It's something that I thought that we had an agreement on, that you committed to in working groups. In past years, by March, individual board members have had opportunity to chair committees or task force or working groups, and I believe that that's being stifled. And we just had a great panel of teachers who are teacher leaders who talked about the importance of empowering everyone within an organization so that we have the best outcome for the students we serve. I really encourage the leadership team to let us be empowered and to serve our constituents in leadership roles. Thank you, Madam President.
Let me just respond to that. I think that's a fair point, Mr. Jacobson, and we had intended to include the chairs of these working groups in this resolution. And we have had this resolution in front of us for a few months, but we keep working on it. And so the resolution never got adopted until tonight, but your point is well taken. We could have named them prior. And I will also say that my hope is that at the August working session, that we will discuss sort of the future of these working groups as well as other committee structures. And so that will be an opportunity to address that, because I think it's a fair point.
Thank you, but my understanding is that the board does not meet in August.
That was my understanding, but we do have an August working meeting on our calendar.
I won't be attending. I'm out of town because I scheduled travel around the August recess.
So,
but regardless of that, I hope that the committee, that the board continues to work on issues, and I appreciate your commitment to shared leadership.
I think we can also take this up administratively, because I think there was a lot of confusion about this meeting. I had thought there wasn't. I know I had told some people there wasn't, and then at our last meeting, it was announced that we did, and I think we all agreed to that, but maybe people aren't going to be here. So I'm just going to suggest, can I just suggest informally that after this meeting, administratively, we poll people and determine whether or not people can and want to have this meeting in August, and otherwise we'll delay that discussion until September. Mr. Parker?
Yes. One, I just want to acknowledge and appreciate the addition of anti-racist within the work in the context of our social studies standards in a climate that we have today with the president that we have today. I think that is increasingly important, and so I just wanted to make that mention. Also, in line 64, is it possible to switch comparable to grade level so that it would read, understand the extent to which students across the city are exposed to grade level assignments and demonstrate comparable work in those assignments?
I will not stand in your way, but I think this would give us greater ability to see what's different and the same in a more nuanced way. And I mean, part of what we would find out is the extent to which, what the grade levels were in different places. So
I will say the emphasis of the research is about relationship to grade level expectations as a means of equity. And so while I still think we will get to comparable measurements, I would hate for that to be lost with the research.
Can I suggest that we have an insert there that says are exposed to comparable assignments, including grade level rigor?
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Did you just say comparable grade level assignments?
I said comparable assignments, including comparability around grade level or grade level rigor. It's fine.
I think if you said comparable grade level assignments and demonstrate comparable work in those assignments, that you cover all
But
the
I do
bases.
think that has a different meaning. And so I think,
I'm agreeing with you.
but I think comparable grade level assignments, I don't think we need to measure how alike or different our assignments are across the city, but the focus is which students are having access to grade level assignments, however those assignments are framed or positioned. So
I don't want to dance on the head of a pin, but I think
it seems like splitting hairs, but it is important to the focus of the research.
So here's my question: is without dancing on the head of the pin, can we do both? I think that's the point. Is that we want to look at the grade level of the assignments, but we also want to look at other things potentially.
Yes.
That's all.
Yes. Okay. Sure. But I do think as long as grade level is added in there, that's important. A question, I know this is not in the resolution itself, but documents that are internal, whether there would be any difference in rollout, whether this is under a research working group or well-rounded education working group?
It specifically does not name working groups because we're going to have a conversation about how we're going to proceed in terms of the structure.
I guess, okay, second question. Once this vote happens, if it's under said working group, then what is the consequence of that? In other words, does this working group have the ability to change the form, structure, focus of the research?
Yeah.
Within certain parameters. In other words, the groups need to have some ability to move with the researcher and sort of think about, more of the details. But what's in here is intended as the
There's a broad range of research.
the goal.
I don't think
Okay, thank you.
Is there something else that should be added that would make you feel more confident?
I will make the implicit explicit. I guess my concern is, one, the focus of the research is not clearly or accurately articulated here. But two, I would not want to vote for this with one assumption, and then it goes to a working group, and then it's changed. And so I guess I'm asking the extent to which you plan on this vote representing the intention behind the proposed research versus what I see in this document that is not in the resolution. I'm seeing words like likely focused or maybe or or September, it seems like there is a lot of room for change. I'm looking at this project plan document.
I think the likelies are really meant more on the timelines, just understanding the timelines move sometimes, sadly. It's not really meant to be on the substance of it.
Got it. Thank you.
And
Can we just maybe interject that if there are any subsequent changes?
Microphone, please.
Can I just suggest that we add the caveat that if there are any substantive changes, that it comes back to the board for a vote?
yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, if ever anybody is what I would suggest is that if we would keep everybody up to date, and if there was a desire to have such a vote because the change was substantial, we would certainly be able to do that.
Thank you.
I mean, it really is just meant to give some room for people to continue discussing as the realities become more clear. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, with that, seeing no further discussion, the motion is on approval of SR 19-7, implementation of working group proposals. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion carries. And I believe that is the end. So we can, I will entertain a motion for adjournment, or good and welfare, if anybody has something to add, to say.
I'd like to make a motion, we adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. We are hereby adjourned. Wait, all in favor?
Aye.
Hey, wait, before I do this, if I don't see people next month and we don't have that, everybody have a wonderful rest of your summer, and to you out there too, have a wonderful rest of your summer. Adjourned. Well, let's. We did a text. Yes.
Yeah, so